Chapter 41. The Untouchable Ahead. Under normal circumstances, the strong would naturally pursue higher rankings, so the strength of the students defending the martial arts arenas towards the end would be weaker. However, the overwhelming pressure displayed by Jack Clark didn't seem like a weaker opponent. Thus, after the second challenger was defeated, the students watching the surrounding 2 or 3 martial arts arenas hesitated for a moment, with no one stepping up. In the martial arts arena, Jack looked around and asked, "Is there no one to challenge?" "I'm in." At this moment, a male student carrying a huge sword like a door panel came over. Seeing that no one was coming up to the number 49 arena, he quickly jumped up in excitement. Class 1, Mullen Weiss. Class 3, Jack Clark. The two of them politely introduced themselves and their classes. Then, Mullen Weiss reminded Jack while drawing his 40-centimeter wide and over 2-meter long huge sword from behind him. "Brother, my cultivation method is the advanced Imperial Capital Giant Sword, which overpowers people with force. You need to be careful." Unexpectedly, the opponent was so straightforward that he even revealed his cultivation method. Jack hesitated for a moment and introduced his own. "I practice the low-level martial arts Dragon Elephant Power, mainly focusing on strength. My power is quite big." "What? Low-level martial arts?" Mullen Weiss was stunned. Then a relaxed smile appeared on his face. "Brother, although I don't want to take advantage of you, I have to take your rank for the extra contribution reward points." Jack looked at him weirdly. "It's alright. If I lose, it just means my skills are not as good. Let's begin and decide the winner." As Mullen Weiss pointed his sword, his entire aura suddenly changed, with an oppressive feeling spreading and a strong momentum. Such strength. Jack squinted his eyes, his expression becoming a little more serious, because he felt that Mullen Weiss might be as strong as Marcus Lee. Boom. Mullen Weiss stomped on the ground, causing a slight tremor under the enormous force. He then charged towards Jack with his sword in hand. With one swing, the sword came crashing down. Clang. When the swords collided, sparks flew in all directions, and the invisible shock wave even swept the surrounding air. Added Nobleman at. "How is that possible?" Seeing Jack, who blocked his sword, Mullen Weiss was taken aback. "Didn't you say you practice low-level martial arts?" Out of respect for Mullen, Jack held the sword with both hands and blocked Mullen's attack. He then used his furious power to repel Mullen. Immediately after that, he swung his sword diagonally. Clang. Sparks flew. He swung his sword again. He slashed with both hands and turned around to attack with full force. Clang, clang, clang. After 5 consecutive slashes, Mullen was pushed back to the edge of the martial arts arena, and he was completely baffled by Jack's overwhelming power. Just then, another slash tore through the raging wind, appearing before Mullen's eyes. Unable to dodge it, Mullen subconsciously blocked it with his sword horizontally. Clang. Due to the tremendous force, Mullen fell off the martial arts arena. Jack took a deep breath, put his sword away and stood still. Looking at the slightly confused Mullen below, Jack smiled and said, "Student Weiss, it seems that the number 49 rank still belongs to me." Jack, do you really practice low-level martial arts?" Mullen Weiss was still baffled. Jack nodded. "Yes." Mullen Weiss's face immediately revealed an expression of agony. "Damn, if I had known, I wouldn't have challenged you. I lost a lot this time." Initially, he saw that the students in the front martial arts arenas were quite fierce. So, without being completely confident, he intentionally came to the back to challenge. He thought that the students defending these martial arts arenas would be weaker and that he could win easily. After all, the rewards for the top 50 were the same, and he didn't care about his specific rank. Who knew that he would randomly pick a martial arts arena and encounter a freak who practiced low-level martial arts but could crush him with absolute strength? And since each person had only one chance to challenge, he could only watch the competition from the sidelines. Thinking of this, Mullen Weiss felt even more upset. But there was nothing he could do. He had lost, so he could only turn and leave. After witnessing Jack's strength, the students at the surrounding martial arts arenas dared not step forward. After waiting for a while, a female student arrived from the front. This female student had a similar thought to Mullen Weiss. She wanted to take advantage of the situation by challenging the arenas towards the back. Seeing that there was no one in the number 49 arena, she jumped up in excitement. Then, Jack Clark sent him flying with 3 strikes. After winning 4 matches in a row, Jack Clark firmly secured the 49th ranking. Phew. At the number 50 arena next door, Zach Lyons, who had just defeated a challenger, gasped for breath and admired Jack Clark from 10 meters away, Dude, you're really awesome. Action. In contrast to all his exhausting victories, the expert on the other side was like the autumn wind sweeping away dead leaves, taking down all challengers in just a few strikes. Jack Clark grinned modestly. Not at all, it's just that my luck is better than yours. Zach Lyons rolled his eyes. Brother, don't be so modest, we all saw how fierce you were just now. Brother, why don't you go to the front? Zach Lyons was curious. Jack Clark shook his head modestly. The students ahead are too strong. I don't think I'm their match, so it's nice to be able to mix in the back ranks. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Zach Lyons was speechless, placed his weapon down, and sat down cross-legged to recover. As in the first round, there was a short break after each battle to recover strength. Standing on the stage, Jack Clark looked into the distance, where the competition was still fierce. It was estimated that it would take another half an hour for the second round to end. While waiting idly, Jack Clark silently analyzed today's gains. Although most of his opponents were easily dealt with, their reactions and tactics during the battle were helpful from another perspective. On top of that, the reason he could do so easily was that his strength had improved these days, with his power attribute reaching 68 points. His current arm strength was about 450 kilograms, which was 9 times that of an ordinary person, not the 6 times shown on the data. It seemed that the higher the 4 major attributes were, the greater the growth in all aspects, rather than increasing according to normal multiples. In the audience seats, Justin Wellen was numb, looking suspiciously at Jack Clark on the number 49 arena. What's going on? How did Jack become so powerful all of a sudden? He knew that there were more than 100 ordinary geniuses in the whole school who had breakthroughs within a week. Most of them, except for a few with bad luck like him, made it into the top 200. In this situation, Jack Clark's overwhelming strength shown by dealing with 4 challengers in a row was enough to enter the top 10 of the grade. Was this still the Jack Clark he knew? The good friend who had barely managed to establish his foundation in half a month and cultivated 2 low-level martial art techniques? Or was it that Jack Clark was just playing him during their sparring a few days ago? Freya Louise smiled slightly, whispering, it's because of the true martial compatibility. He said that when he practiced dragon elephant power these days, his strength doubled strangely. True martial compatibility. No wonder. Justin Wellen suddenly realized, I remember when Jack was establishing his foundation, his compatibility with physique and strength enhancing skills was very high. I didn't expect that. As Justin Wellen said this, he paused, and then his face showed a look of regret. That's because the dragon elephant power was just a low-level martial skill with limited potential. Even if Jack Clark could make rapid progress in the first layer heaven and second layer heaven due to his high compatibility, the gap between him and those who practiced advanced techniques would still be huge. This gap wasn't just about the upper limit of martial skills, but also the amplification and burst moves. At the first layer heaven, there was no true strength, and the true martial arts skill only condensed the power, so the gap between the low-level martial arts and the advanced ones was not very obvious. At this time, the low-level martial arts had an amplification of 1 time, while the advanced ones were about 1.5 times. But after cultivating true strength at second layer heaven, the low-level martial arts only had a 2-fold increase, while the advanced one started at 3 times. Some people with high compatibility could even burst out 4 times or even 5 times the amplification. It meant that in the early stage of second layer heaven, when everyone's basic strength was 400 kilograms, the strength-type low-level martial arts could burst out with more than 2,000 kilograms of impact. But under the amplification of high-level martial arts true strength, that basic strength could easily burst out with over 3,000 or even 4,000 kilograms of power. And this was just the basic strength, not to mention the burst moves that came with advanced martial skills. So after the second layer heaven, the gap between the two sides would widen rapidly. In addition, breaking through the second layer heaven with advanced martial skills would allow faster refinement of heavenly energy, more refined true strength, and other advantages. Thinking of this, Justin Wellen couldn't help feeling regretful. If Jack's initial talent had been better and he had established his foundation within a week, he would have been able to cultivate an advanced martial skill, but now, sigh. Chapter 42. You can be a bit arrogant. 50 arenas held matches at the same time, with the second round only taking an hour to finish. Under the gazes of more than 2,000 people, accompanied by the big screen being refreshed in the stadium, only 50 names remained at the top. Jack Clark saw his name ranked at 49th and revealed a faint smile on his face. Besides him, he also saw the names of familiar people. Crystal Leinster successfully defended the 10th place, Matt Watkins at 29th, and Marcus Lee, whom he defeated, at 34th. It was just that Mandy Leinster, the class leader's sister, was ranked at 40th. This ranking made Jack Clark slightly apprehensive because he felt that this girl named Mandy Leinster was very strong, maybe even stronger than Marcus Lee. On the main stage, Vernon Leinster announced, "The second round of the competition is over. Now we have the challenge matches. Those who aren't satisfied with their ranking have one chance to challenge someone in the top 10. If you win, you move forward. If you lose, your original ranking remains unchanged. Is there anyone who wants to challenge now?" "Me. I want to challenge the 20th place. I want to challenge the 10th place. "Me. I want to challenge the 15th place too. Action." They were all first-year freshmen, all at the first layer heaven. With no worries about their rear, who would be afraid of who? As a result, many of those with lower rankings chose to challenge those ahead, at Nobleman at. Including Zach Lyons, who was ranked 50th, who chose to challenge Mandy Leinster, who was ranked 40th. On the other hand, Jack Clark didn't make a move, and no one challenged the top-ranked Jane Aiken. Under everyone's attention, the challenges quickly ended, and all those who challenged the top 10 failed. In contrast, some who challenged those ranked in the 20s and 30s succeeded. Now I announce that the first game of the freshman ranking tournament is over. On the main stage, Vernon Leinster solemnly said, "All freshmen who ranked in the top 50 will be granted an extra 5 contribution points per month during school time, lasting until the second grade. In addition, all students will receive a 20% discount when exchanging school resources." As soon as Vernon Leinster finished speaking, a staff member hurriedly came up to him and whispered something in his ear. After listening, Vernon Leinster nodded slightly, then said gravely, "I have some matters to attend to with the teachers present, so everyone can disperse. Your contribution points will be credited to your student IDs tomorrow." After saying this, the teachers hurriedly left. Jack Clark carried his knife to the audience seats, where Justin Wellen excitedly shouted, "Jack, you really made a big splash this time, making it into the top 50. Jack Clark replied with a smile, "Is it really that exaggerated? It's just 49th place." Justin Wellen was speechless. "Jack, you're good at everything, but your humbleness always makes me want to hit you, seriously." Peef. Freya Louise couldn't help but laugh at his words. Justin Wellen snorted, "It's just 49th place. If you don't want it, give it to me. I didn't even get into the second round of the competition. I've had worse luck than you." Freya Louise came up to Jack Clark and smiled. "Actually, you can be a little more arrogant, Jack, because being in the top 50 of the freshmen is really impressive. Out of the nearly 2,000 students in their grade, over 700 to 800 have successfully established their foundation. Additionally, there are over 100 so-called geniuses, cultivating advanced skills." Under such circumstances, for Jack Clark, who was practicing the low-level dragon elephant power, to make it into the top 50 was quite a surprise and astonishment to all who knew him. Including Crystal Leinster and Matt Watkins, no one thought that there would be someone in their class who could make it into the top 50, especially since that person seemed to have an average initial talent. That's why Freya Louise said he could be a little more arrogant because he had earned it. Jack Clark smiled and said, "Okay, I'll be a little more arrogant, at least until everyone breaks through to the second layer heaven." Laughing and chatting, the three of them mingled with the crowd and left the stadium. Over 2,000 people left the sports stadium in groups and went their separate ways. Today's competition was intense and exciting for the participants, but not many people attached great importance to it at the vast South Sky High Martial Arts campus. Even the school authorities only had some teachers present, with no leaders attending. As for the senior students, most of them were not at school, and only a few of those who were at school came to watch out of interest. For them, a first layer heaven competition held no attraction, and they would rather spend the time cultivating. Ellipsis. It was only 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and while Justin Wellen and others went to practice, Jack Clark followed Freya Louise to the 33rd floor to read. After flipping through a bookshelf, Jack took out a book on mutated beast anatomy while Freya had already sat by the window with a book of Taoist scriptures in her hands. Jack sat down across from her and asked curiously, "Why do you always sit in this spot?" Freya brushed a strand of hair away from her ear, revealing a pretty, fair side profile, and said with a smile, "Because the view is wide open and I can enjoy the sunshine. Don't you think reading quietly in the lazy, slanting sun in the afternoon is very poetic?" With that, the girl playfully winked at Jack. Unexpectedly, Jack was stumped and replied, "You talk a lot, but you have a point. With that, the two shared a faint smile before each lowering their heads to read, savoring the rare afternoon time. It didn't look like they had just experienced an intense and spectacular competition. However, while claiming to read, Jack's mind was mostly sinking into the heavy armored beast. The brief glory of today was not getting to his head. He was well aware that his current advantage would not last long. If he wanted to maintain or even surpass the strength of those geniuses in the second layer heaven, he could only count on his avatar's further evolution. Beneath the surging river's surface, the 90-centimeter-long heavy armored beast wandered around, its eyes scanning through the murky water for prey. A school of upward curved mouth fish swam by above, varying in lengths of nearly a meter to a few tens of centimeters. However, the heavy armored beast merely glanced at them before resuming its leisurely patrol along the riverbed. After hunting these past few days, Jack found that these common fish species were generally low in nutrients and the best nutrition came from mutated large fish species. The same nutrient mutated fish could deliver several times more high caloric energy after being consumed, greatly promoting the growth of the heavy armored beast. Suddenly, a huge shadow with astounding speed charged into the school of fish ahead, breaking the water and swallowing a 1-meter-long upward curved mouth fish in its large mouth. It was a mutated fish more than 3 meters long, resembling a large-mouthed catfish, covered with black scales, and its massive head made up half of its body, measuring about a meter wide. Its mouth was filled with numerous sharp teeth, and its 4 1-meter-long barbels floated as it consumed more than 10 upward curved mouth fish in just a few passes, showing its ferocity. Bang! At that moment, the riverbed mud exploded, and the previously slow-moving heavy armored beast burst forth with strength on its limbs and charged towards the mutant catfish amidst the rolling mud. Noticing the incoming heavy armored beast, the huge mutated catfish did not retreat but advanced, and its huge mouth opened wide like a black hole, emitting a powerful suction force. Gulp! The mutated catfish swallowed the heavy armored beast in one bite. Compared to the over 3-meter long and 1-meter wide mutated catfish, the heavy armored beast, which was less than 1 meter long, was just a small guy, and it was eaten. Suddenly, the mutated catfish went crazy, rolling violently in the water, and thick blood gushed from its gills. A black skull burst out of the mutated catfish's head, and the blood from the 3 pairs of feather horns on either side filled the black armor of the beast, making it look extremely ferocious. Chapter 43. Raging Wind and Storm. The heavy armored beast wreaked havoc in the river and returned to the cave on the riverbank to rest and digest after getting its fill. Withdrawing his consciousness, Jack Clark looked up and saw it was already past 5 in the afternoon. The orange-red sunset slanted in, casting streaks of light and shadow on the ground. "It's this late already," Jack exclaimed. Since the heavy armored beast was released, Jack, who was constantly using his consciousness, felt that time passed so quickly that a day was gone in the blink of an eye, and there seemed to be no time to do anything. At this time, Freya Louise closed her book, looked at the time and whispered, "It's about time, shall we go back together?" "Sure." Jack nodded. As usual, the two put their books back in place and took the elevator out of the teaching building. On the tree-shaded pedestrian walkway within the school, the sunset penetrated through the branches, casting scattered spots of light. Walking side by side, Freya suddenly asked, "How do you feel after sweeping up so many cultivating geniuses today?" Jack thought for a while. "Well, those people are actually pretty strong." Freya slightly tilted her head. "Why do you say that?" Jack explained. "Didn't you notice? Although I suppressed them with absolute strength during the battle, they weren't in a panic. Even when caught off guard by my sudden burst, their instinctive reactions were very standard, and they didn't panic after a single defeat. This shows that their will and temperament are very tenacious. As long as they accumulate more combat experience, they will become formidable when their strength improves." "You know, I didn't even notice that." Freya blinked. When she thought back to Jack's battle today, she found that it seemed similar to what he had described, as those people didn't panic even when faced with Jack's crushing strength. At the same time, she also admired Jack for being so sober at this time. Chatting, the two walked out of the school and followed the street. Boom. Suddenly a thunderous sound shook their ears. The sky was still clear, with no dark clouds in sight, but raindrops as big as beans fell densely from the sky. The sudden thundershower caught everyone off guard, and the streets were filled with people running to take cover from the rain. Cars were also hard to come by in half a day. Especially due to the raging wind, people couldn't even open their eyes. Action. Jack and Freya were also drenched, and the nearest shelter was several tens of meters away down the road. We can take shelter from the rain over there. In the midst of the downpour, Jack hurriedly led Freya to run towards a small park by the roadside with a pavilion, originally a place to escape the summer heat. By the time they ran into the pavilion, their clothes were soaked. Jack was fine. He wiped his face and shook off the water droplets from his hair. However, Freya was a bit disheveled, her long hair wet and draped over her back, entwined with the white butterfly ribbon, revealing her clean and beautiful face. Her trousers were also tightly wrapped around her body due to the dampness, revealing her well-proportioned and slender legs. Stop staring. Freya blushed slightly, as she hid from Jack's gaze. Jack retracted his appreciative gaze, smiled and said, "It's not my fault. Who told you to be so beautiful and have such a good figure?" He didn't show a hint of the embarrassment a youth should have on his face, and his candid demeanor made Freya feel less shy and tense. Jack casually asked, "I wonder how long this rain will last." Freya was indeed distracted and looked up, thinking, this kind of thundershower usually doesn't last long. It might stop in half an hour. Summer thundershowers are always like this, sudden and unpredictable. Sometimes the sky is as clear as it can be, and the next moment it's covered in dark clouds. Sometimes, even when the sun is shining brightly, heavy rain suddenly pours down, catching people off guard. As Freya predicted, the rain began to lighten after about 10 minutes, turning into a lighter drizzle, which lasted less than half an hour. As the strong wind died down and the heavy rain stopped, puddles were everywhere on the streets, and leaves were scattered on the ground. Illuminated by the remaining glow of the setting sun, everything looked hauntingly beautiful after the devastation. Looking up at the sun that hadn't set yet, Jack shook his head helplessly. What a weird weather. As he said this, he began to unbutton his clothes, startling Freya, who immediately took a few steps back and asked warily, "What are you doing, Jack?" Jake replied in annoyance, "What do you think? Do you think you can walk back like this?" At this point, Jack had already removed his shirt, revealing his strong upper body. The 8 clearly visible abdominal muscles exuded a masculine aura. For the two who practiced true martial arts, getting soaked didn't matter, as they wouldn't catch a cold. "Stop staring and put this on to cover yourself." This time it was Jack's turn to say. Freya averted her gaze, somewhat embarrassed, and put on Jack's wet shirt. On the way back, passers-by cast strange looks at Jack, who was walking shirtless, revealing his well-toned body. Especially the women. The younger ones would be embarrassed, but the married women would continue to stare with scorching eyes. When they reached the intersection where they parted ways to go home, Freya said somewhat shyly, "I'll wash and return your shirt tomorrow." "All right." Jack nodded. When he returned home, Glenn Clark asked about Jack not wearing a shirt and then was casually dismissed by Jack. After dinner, Jack practiced dragon elephant power and mind's eye bright knife before taking a bath. He lay in bed, let his consciousness sink in and arrived at the heavy armored beast's side. It was already 11 o'clock at night, and he planned to eat his fill before resting. However, just as Jack's consciousness controlled the heavy armored beast and was about to crawl out of the cave and into the river, he suddenly heard the sound of explosions and roaring coming from the rear. The water surface was rippling from the tremors. The sudden change made the heavy armored beast pause as it slightly poked its head out of the water. He saw over 100 meters away on the riverside slope, more than 10 figures were chasing each other at breakneck speed. In the blink of an eye, they appeared close by. At the same time, a few armored cars were following closely behind, with the high wattage searchlights on the cars illuminating a large area in front of them like daylight. At Nobleman at. At this moment, a man in the chase leapt up high like a rock and slapped it out with his palm. Boom. In an instant, the air exploded, and the violent force, like a tangible raging wind, blew away the turf in the range of tens of meters, creating a terrifying and intimidating scene. Facing this strike, the two people in the front had to turn around and fight back. Glowing red blood shadows appeared around them, forming 2 transparent blood pythons as thick as water barrels, blocking their path. Boom. Boom. Under the force of the overbearing slap, the 2 blood pythons shattered, and the red impact swept across the range of more than 10 meters, resulting in trembling ground and flying dust and gravel. And because of this retaliatory slap, the figures behind swiftly surrounded the two in all directions. Chapter 44. True Martial Arts Phantom. The 2 people surrounded in the center were tall, covered in black robes, with an appearance that couldn't be exposed. 8 people were surrounding them, including middle-aged men dressed in law enforcement uniforms and South Sky Martial Height teachers such as Lori Parma. At the same time, several armored cars stopped 100 meters away, with laser headlights shining as bright as daylight, and soldiers aiming their sniper rifles at the two people. At this moment, Vernon Leinster, who had stopped them with a palm strike, slowly came forward and said coldly, "You minions of the evil god, it was bad enough that you caused trouble in Koroya, but you dared to come to Eastern Summer. Speak up. Who is supporting you?" One of the black-robed men spoke hoarsely, "One don't understand what you're talking about. We are here to promote the will of the great supreme god, Acunas. HMPH. You won't admit it." Vernon Leinster's gaze was icy. "Do you think we can't find out if you don't tell us? Without anyone supporting you, how could you sneak around for so many days without being discovered? Let me guess, your land route was blocked, and the air route was impossible, so you had to take the water route. And, of the few groups and forces in this city related to water routes that could avoid various checkpoints." At this moment, the two cultists suddenly shouted frantically, "For the great Acunas!" Boom. In an instant, red light surged around the two people, transforming into two even larger blood python phantoms that circled around several meters. A strong, evil aura spread out. Seeing this, Lori Parma and the others around them changed their expressions slightly and took a step back. "Be careful, use true power protection on your body, and don't let the polluted blood touch you." Bang! Bang! At this moment, two soldiers holding sniper rifles on the armored cars 100 meters away suddenly fired, and a large piece of red light exploded in front of the two cultists. The two bullets, capable of penetrating armored cars, tore through the blood pythons' bodies, creating two basin-sized holes before being stopped by an invisible force right in front of the cultists' thighs. "You don't need to take action, just blockade the surroundings and prevent anyone from coming to support them." As Vernon Leinster spoke, an overwhelming aura burst from his body. Under the heavy pressure, a 2-meter-high black furious ape phantom slowly formed behind him. Boom. Vernon Leinster's aura suddenly increased several times, and with his will and true power aura spreading out, the pressure became solid, making the surrounding air seem to freeze, heavy and terrifying. He's actually a 7th-layer heaven powerhouse and has condensed a true martial arts phantom. The two men's faces changed drastically. Weren't the high-ranking powerhouses here supposed to be absent? Roar. In the furious ape phantom's roar, Vernon Leinster leapt high into the air several meters, his whole body shining with black true power. He swung down with a palm strike. At the same time, the furious ape phantom behind Vernon Leinster also struck down with a palm, stacking the attack and condensing it into a 10-meter-wide black palm print. Boom. As soon as the palm print appeared, a terrifying pressure fell from the sky onto the two cultists, making the bones in their bodies crackle. The ground around the two men within a 10-meter radius suddenly sank, forming a palm print more than 10 centimeters deep, its might horrifying. Facing this almost irresistible attack, the two cultists suddenly looked up, their faces revealing vehement fanaticism without any fear. "Great Acunas, we are willing to offer everything we have, just to have your trace revealed in this world. Appear now, nine-headed god." Accompanied by the prayer filled with eerie madness, the blood light on the two men's bodies became more intense, and a powerful force burst from within them. Hiss hiss hiss. Amid the burning blood light, hideous blood python heads emerged, transforming into a 9-headed blood python howling towards the sky, all happening in the blink of an eye. The 9 thick serpent heads hissed as their entwined bodies coiled like blood pillars towards Vernon Leinster in the sky, violently colliding with the falling palm print. Boom. Red and black light erupted in the air, the violent power like the explosion of 100 kilograms of high explosives. The shockwave raised smoke and dust, sweeping across dozens of meters. The terrifying explosion made the earth tremble, and the street lamps on the nearby Riverside Road detonated with a bang, all shattered by the explosion's shockwave. Such frightening destructive power made the heavy armored beast in the distant river's surface tense up its entire body. It took several minutes for the smoke and dust to calm down, revealing an 8-meter-wide crater at the center, and on the bottom of the pit were only a few broken limbs and bodies of the black-robed men. Lori Parma and the others nullified their external true strength, walked over with solemn expressions, and stood at the edge of the pit. "These people are crazy, they just blew themselves up." The middle-aged man in law enforcement uniform said in a deep voice, "That's what makes them terrifying. Before joining the evil god sect, these people were just ordinary triplex cultivators. But after joining the evil god sect, they obtained something called God's blood, which allowed many of them to break through to 4th-layer heaven or 5th-layer heaven, with their strength skyrocketing. And once the situation turns unfavorable, these madmen will burn the god's blood and explode, with the explosion power enough to severely injure or even kill stronger experts." Because of this, many experts in the Koroya royal family have been severely injured in sneak attacks, leading to the increasingly deteriorating situation. Vernon Leinster walked over with a somewhat solemn expression. It's indeed troublesome. After they burn the so-called god's blood, their strength almost increases by a whole level. Originally, they had just the strength of entering the 6th level heaven, but after the explosion, they were almost equal to one of my strikes. Lori Parma rolled her eyes. Mr. Lester, stop pretending. We know that your strength is excellent after breaking through to the 7th layer heaven, but they are not equal to your strike. The other school teachers also looked envious and annoyed, as if seeing Vernon Leinster flaunt made them uncomfortable. Hey, are you guys dissatisfied? If you're not satisfied, you should break through as well. Vernon Leinster chuckled. Lori Parma said enviously, we'd love to, but we're just short of it. But since you have already broken through to the 7th layer heaven, you should be going back there, right? Vernon Leinster nodded. Yeah, I've applied to be transferred to the frontline battlefield. I will leave after this semester. It's just that recently, the evil god sect has been increasingly rampant, spreading among the small allied countries in Koroya, and I don't know how the higher-ups will handle it. Added Nobleman at. While they were talking, an armored car from a distance drove over, and then some soldiers came down to collect the broken limbs and remnants of the two cultists, preparing to bring them back for research. After tidying up, everyone got in their car and left, and the riverside returned to tranquility once again. It was not until then that the water plants on the distant riverside shook slightly, and the heavy armored beast head peeked out of the water's surface. Staring in shock at the distant crater, Jack Clark didn't expect high-ranking true martial experts to be so powerful, just being at the 7th layer heaven and unleashing such terrifying destructive power with one strike. They were much stronger than the martial arts hall experts he had seen in the videos. He had also heard for the first time terms like true martial arts phantom, evil god, god's blood, etc. It seemed that this world was more dangerous than he had imagined. After taking a deep look at the large crater, the heavy armored beast slowly disappeared under the river surface. It needed to eat a mutated fish to calm its nerves, as this world was too dangerous. Chapter 45. The beginning of turbulence. The next day, the weather was gloomy. When Jack Clark got up, he did some exercises, had breakfast, and went out with Glenn Clark. Looking at Jack Clark walking ahead, his figure becoming more upright and robust, faintly exuding a sense of oppression, Glenn Clark was somewhat puzzled. Bro, why can't we in junior high start cultivation? A month ago, his brother still looked skinny. Now, in just over a month, he has become so handsome and mighty. It was enviably impressive. Jack Clark explained, because your bodies have not fully developed yet, and various bodily functions are not perfect, cultivating the overbearing true martial too early may result in some abnormal changes. We still have to wait. Glenn Clark seemed a little disappointed. Jack Clark glanced at him and reminded, this is the experience gained after many years of official research, it won't be wrong. When you get to high school, as long as you have the talent, you can naturally cultivate. Schools have systematic training and favored resources, which are safer than your own exploration. Also, don't trust those sophistries on the internet. Don't practice those incomplete true martial cultivation methods, or you might end up in trouble. Understand? No, brother. Seeing that Glenn Clark had taken his words to heart, Jack Clark nodded and didn't say anything more. For some reason, the internet was currently full of confusing opinions, where discussions that anyone could cultivate in true martial were prevalent. Furthermore, there were people spreading various cultivation methods on the internet. Although these methods were quickly filtered and removed by the authorities, some had still managed to leak out. For example, Jack Clark had screen captured several pieces. He found that these were low-level martial arts with only 2 or 3 layers, and the content was incomplete. Without going through the foundation establishment step, it would be very difficult to cultivate successfully. Even if some gifted genius really managed to cultivate successfully with these, without subsequent methods, they would be stuck at the 1st and 2nd layer heaven. It was unclear what the people releasing these incomplete methods were thinking. Under current Federation laws, almost everyone would have a chance to cultivate when they entered high school in the 3 Great Alliance nations. Whether they could succeed in their cultivation or not would depend on their talent. As for those small and medium-sized allied nations outside of the 3 big ones, due to local laws and some agreements formed when the Federation was established, the Federation could not interfere too much. Therefore, while ordinary people in some countries had the opportunity to learn cultivation methods, in some small allied nations, the true martial was controlled by the higher-ups and ordinary people had no chance to come into contact with it. Were the purposes of those people on the internet to disrupt those small allied nations? Lost in thought, Jack Clark arrived at school. However, he did not go to the cultural classroom, but directly to the cultivation area on the third floor of Building C. The test last Friday had come to an end. His results were not bad, he didn't need to study anymore. Jack Clark is here. Ah, Darren, you're here. Jack Clark, well done yesterday. As soon as Jack Clark walked into the third floor, some students greeted him. They were far more enthusiastic than before. Of course, this was the influence of having placed 49th. After a day of fermentation, the basic information of everyone in the top 50 on the school official website had been dug out. Others were fine, the worst of them were ordinary geniuses, who established their foundation within a week, especially Jane Aiken, who was in the first place, making people feel desperate. Among these people, however, Jack Clark was the only ordinary student who established a foundation half a month ago and practiced low-level martial arts. Being able to break into the top 50 in the midst of these strong figures was not the work of a weak person, so the name Jack Clark also had a certain fame among the new students. However, it was just a little bit of fame. Compared to Jack Clark, Howard Lee, the second place, was the real sensation in South Sky Marshall Heights. It was rumored that he was capable of carrying a huge load when enrolling, possessed innate divine strength, had a basic arm strength of over 600 kilograms, and increased to 900 kilograms after breaking through the first layer Fleven. In addition, his cultivation method compatibility was perfect, and the basic increase of just the first layer heaven had reached twice as much. With full strength, his power could reach a terrifying level of 3 to 4,000 kilograms. With such a terrifying power, using a 500 kilogram alloy steel pillar as a weapon, he would crush all peers. No one could match him at the same level. Some even say that Jane Aiken wouldn't be a match for him. No choice but to admit, his strength is just too absurd. Facing the greetings from his classmates, Jack Clark politely responded to each one before finding an empty cultivation zone to start today's practice. At noon, Jack bumped into Justin Wellen in the cafeteria. Or rather, Justin Wellen came up to him with a bright smile, saying, "Jack, have you thought about what cultivation resources you'd like to exchange for?" "Not yet." Jack shook his head. The school's cultivation resources are expensive, and they can only be exchanged with contribution points. Without yesterday's entry into the top 50 and the additional reward, Jack's monthly 3 contribution points would only be enough to exchange for some trivial things. Justin Wellen suggested, "Your compatibility with the Dragon Elephant Power method is very high. You don't need to worry about your martial arts practice, so one suggests you exchange for resources that can strengthen your constitution. As long as your physique reaches the first layer heaven limit soon, you will quickly be able to break through to the second layer heaven. Added Nobleman at. For that, one recommend you exchange for level 1 life crystals, dragon blood paste, or cold crystal liquid." To Justin Wellen, because of Jack's high compatibility, his power bursts strongly and his main martial arts practice progresses fast. What holds him back now is his insufficient physique. What he didn't know was Jack's physique had already surpassed the first layer heaven limit. The factor restricting his breakthrough to second layer heaven was actually the progress in martial arts practice. Regarding this misunderstanding, Jack didn't explain, but just nodded. "Okay, I'll check it out at the logistics department later." "Justin, how much longer before you break through?" Jack asked, somewhat curious. "About half a month," Justin Wellen said. "Although I was unlucky this time and didn't make it into the top 50, one still have 4 contribution points every month. Coupled with the remaining points from last month, I'll just have enough to exchange for a life crystal to strengthen my constitution. I predict I'll reach the first layer heaven limit in about a week. Then I'll condense my chi blood for another week, and one should be able to break through." "You only need a week to cultivate true strength." Jack was a bit surprised. After reaching the first layer heaven limit, you need to keep circulating the martial arts method. When the chi blood is condensed to the extreme, true strength is born. For those quickly progressing like Jane Aiken, this takes about a week. In comparison, those with lesser talent require half a month, or even 2 months. It's really stressful. And it's not just second layer heaven, each breakthrough of each layer heaven is like a barrier. Many people with insufficient talents get stuck at third layer heaven for a lifetime. This is why the school divides authority grades based on initial talents. You can't help it. People with good talents practice faster, break through realms more easily, maximize the effects of resources of the same level, and have a lower difficulty practicing advanced martial arts techniques. On the contrary, If a person with mediocre talent is given advanced martial arts, he or she will find it hard to practice. Because the entry difficulty is higher, the required resources are more precious, and breaking through the realms is more difficult. Of course, nothing is absolute. After all, there are always a few rare prodigies among such a large population in the entire world. In response to Jack's surprise, Justin Wellen proudly said, "One am a genius after all. Although my initial practice speed is a bit slower than theirs, 1am pretty awesome in other aspects." Jack pondered for a bit and said, "Like having a weaker realm barrier." Hee hee. You could say that, just like how your constitution is highly compatible with strength-based cultivation methods. Justin Wellen paused for a bit, and didn't deny it. From his perspective, Jack was also someone with talent. "I feel that within the next week, many of the people in the top 50 will break through to the second layer heaven. So envious. They get an extra 5 contribution points each month, and a 20% discount when exchanging their resources." Speaking to this point, Justin Wellen showed an envious expression. Jack also sighed with a nod. Yes, with the tilt of the resources this time, many talented students who originally would need a month to break through will be able to do so very quickly. The gap between having resources and not is huge. For example, Justin Wellen, who would normally require almost a month and a half to practice, can reach the first layer heaven limit a week earlier by using a life crystal. Faced with this situation, Jack also felt a bit of pressure. Chapter 46. Breakthrough, Elephant Pattern. After dinner, Jack Clark and Justin Wellen came to the logistics department together. While Justin Wellen went to exchange for the life crystal, Jack Clark went to the self-service query machine on the side, entered his student ID, and checked the resources that were suitable for him to exchange. There were very few resources available for freshmen of first layer heaven, a total of 23 types divided into the categories of strengthening constitution, increasing cultivation speed, and assisting in breakthroughs in realm. Jack Clark looked through them and found 5 resources that could help accelerate his dragon elephant power, including the ice crystal snow lotus and the once exchanged tyrant elephant essence blood. However, the tyrant elephant essence blood required 20 contribution points. With his current 8 points, including his ranking reward, he would have to wait another month to exchange it. As for the other 4 resources effects, just as Jack Clark was pondering, Justin Wellen walked over. "All chew, how's it going?" Instead of answering, Jack Clark casually asked, "You're done exchanging?" "Yeah, this thing. Just one of them cost me 5 contribution points. It's such a rip-off." While saying that, with a painful expression, Justin Wellen casually tossed a thumb-sized, multifaceted crystal-like object to Jack Clark, who hurriedly caught it. After all, it was something worth thousands, but just as Jack Clark caught the life crystal, a row of transparent text only he could see appeared. Crystallized life energy detected. Convert to attribute points. Crystallized life energy, attribute points. Seeing the transparent text in front of him, Jack Clark was slightly stunned and subconsciously asked in his mind, "What are attribute points, and what are they used for?" Upon his inquiry, the transparent text in front of him changed. Attribute points are a special power converted from life energy, which can enhance talents, cultivation methods, external weapons, etc. Seeing this, Jack Clark's eyes lit up. From now on, the problem of weak initial talents and slow cultivation progress would no longer be his shackles. "All chew, what's wrong?" Watching the suddenly frozen Jack Clark, Justin Wellen was puzzled. "Oh, nothing." Jack Clark came back to his senses, handed the life crystal back to him, and said, "I'm going to exchange for a life crystal too." "All right, I'm going to cultivate. If you need anything, come find me." Justin Wellen didn't think too much about it because he had suggested Jack Clark exchange for this resource earlier. Watching Justin Wellen leave, Jack Clark approached the counter and politely said, "Teacher, I'd like to exchange for cultivation resources. Enter your student ID. You have 8 contribution points and a 20% discount permission. What do you want to exchange for?" 2 level 1 life crystals. Wait a moment. Soon, 2 thumb-sized white crystals appeared in Jack Clark's hands. After thanking the teacher, he turned and left. Returning to Building C, Jack Clark applied for a private personal cultivation room. Looking at the 2 white crystals in his hand, he chose to convert them. As Jack finalized the decision, an invisible power enveloped the crystals. The 2 life crystals became transparent at a visible speed and finally turned into powder with a pop sound. You have converted 2 crystallized life energies, one yielding 5 attribute points and the other yielding 3 attribute points. Are there different amounts contained in the two crystals? Jack Clark thought as if gaining an insight. Strength. 71. Agility. 58. Spirit. 61. Talent. Soul split plus. Cultivation methods. Lotus platform meditation skill. Complete dragon elephant power plus beginner. First layer, mind's eye bright knife plus, sword skill first layer, heart's eye. Attribute points. 8. Avatar body. Hexagonal armored beast. As his heavy armored beast grew over the past few days, Jack Clark's 4 main attributes also improved. Due to practicing the dragon elephant power, his physique and strength attributes were much higher than agility and spirit attributes. Now, after obtaining attribute points, Jack Clark found both his cultivation methods and talent showed a plus sign, plus, behind them, which seemed to indicate they could be strengthened. When Jack Clark focused on the plus next to the dragon elephant power, a new prompt appeared in front of him. Do you want to consume 7 attribute points to raise the level of dragon elephant power? To enhance the mind's eye bright knife, 10 attribute points are required. Insufficient current attribute points. Insufficient attribute points to enhance strength talent, defense talent, and soul talent. Jack Clark tried testing all the options marked with a plus sign, plus, and found out that he had enough attribute points only to strengthen the dragon elephant power. As for why mind's eye bright knife required 10 points, he thought it was due to his different progress in practicing this cultivation method. As for the talent, strengthen the dragon elephant power. Accompanied by Jack Clark's confirmation, an extremely pure and special energy appeared out of thin air inside his body. It then began to flow and rotate wildly along the root of the dragon elephant power. As the energy continued to rotate, his muscles and bones were strengthened at an astonishing speed, while beneath his skin, a tough membrane was gradually forming. Boom. As the energy had rotated wildly more than 300 times around his meridians, faint elephant skin patterns emerged on Jack Clark's body. His chi blood congealed suddenly. At that moment, an overbearing and violent force was born within his body, causing his aura to soar exponentially. He was like a giant elephant that had just awakened, exuding a strong sense of oppression. After a long time, Jack opened his eyes slowly, a shadow of some terrifying energy flashed through them. Clenching his fist, feeling the explosive power in his body, he exclaimed, "Did I just break through to second layer heaven? That was so easy." Dragon elephant power, which would have taken him a month to break through, was successful in an instant using attribute enhancement. This insane efficiency left Jack Clark breathless. If he had enough life crystals, wouldn't that mean his cultivation speed could skyrocket like a rocket? But he lacked money. On top of that, since the crystals were controlled by the higher-ups, even if he had money, he couldn't buy them outside. So, he still lacked contribution points. Exhaling slowly, Jack suppressed the impatience and greed in his heart. No need to rush. Take it easy. With strengthening from attribute points and avatar synchronously enhancing his physique, he only needed to follow his plan, in order to slowly reach the pinnacle step by step. In this situation, being impatient might even lead to accidents. Did he need to be in a hurry? No. Jack Clark's state of mind slowly returned to normal, then he took a deep breath, and the overbearing force within his body erupted. In an instant, his entire body swelled up a size. Boom. The ground shook, creating a raging wind as Jack appeared in front of a wall 10 meters away in the blink of an eye. His right arm swelled, and elephant patterns emerged. Roar. Accompanied by the sound of the wind and the elephant's roar, Jack punched the tester in the corner of the cultivation room. Boom. The air exploded with an enormous boom. The terrifying power contained in Jack's punch created a tangible wind, while the alloy tester shook violently. At Novelban at. Instantly, the numbers on the tester fluctuated, finally stopping at 3,970 kilograms. At this moment, Jack stepped back half a step, spun around and swept his right leg like a battle axe, with violent wind barreling towards the alloy test board. Boom. The entire tester shook under the terrifying force of that kick, with its numbers fluctuating wildly, finally stopping at 5,650. Chapter 47. The Influence of Consciousness. With a punching strength of over 3,900 kilograms, and a kicking strength of almost 5,700 kilograms, Jack Clark was very satisfied with these numbers. The dragon elephant true strength of the second layer heaven was more overbearing, more fierce, and increased the strength twice directly. At the same time, the breakthrough in the realm allowed him to undergo a transformation, adding 30 points each to his physique and strength attributes, especially the strength breaking through 100. That's almost 10 times that of an ordinary person. In addition to that, His spirit and agility attributes also increased by 20 points each, which could be described as a rapid increase in strength. Furthermore, the elephant pattern formed in the second layer heaven greatly increased his defense. He was able to withstand a solid alloy test bored with his flesh and blood, and only felt a bit of pain from it. After all, the effect of strength is mutual. It could be said that among the low-level martial arts, dragon elephant power already belongs to the strongest category, which combines both strength and defense. The only drawback is that the consumption of the burst is a bit fast. Jack Clark felt that now when using true strength, at most, he could only perform 10 full-strength attacks before he was exhausted. And without using the true strength burst, maintaining a constant state of combat would be no problem for him even fighting at full strength for a day and a night. At Nobleman at. Next, Jack Clark began to practice the matching moves of the second layer of Dragon Elephant Power, Dragon Elephant Furious Quake. Both arms swept across like an elephant's legs, and every movement came with a violent howl. Under the burst of fierce true strength, the entire cultivation room seemed to be buzzing. Busy times always pass quickly. It was just after 4 in the afternoon. With the sound of the school bell, Jack Clark finally completed today's cultivation. Although attribute points can improve martial arts, Jack thinks that daily cultivation still cannot be neglected. After all, even tiny gains count, and it's better to make progress bit by bit. And the enhancement brought by attribute points only eliminates part of the cultivation process. He still needs to get familiar with the techniques and strength through practice, or else he won't be able to unleash the full power. Upon arriving at the 33rd floor, Jack found that Freya Louise was already reading a book and still sitting by the window, although there was no sun today. He flipped through a bookshelf and found a book about the relationship between mutant beasts and mythical creatures. As Jack took his seat opposite her, the girl on the other side slightly raised her head and revealed a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. However, she soon let out a soft, and hesitated to speak. Jack, has your strength improved again? In Freya's eyes, Jack had gained a mysterious oppressive aura that felt heavy and aggressive, as if a giant creature was sitting in front of her. A girl's intuition. Jack paused for a moment and nodded. Today I exchanged some cultivation resources, and after using them, my strength has improved a little. Congratulations. Freya gently smiled as she didn't give it much thought, then pointed to the bag on the table and said, by the way, thank you for the clothes you lent me yesterday. I've already washed them. No need to be so polite. Speaking of this, Jack thought of her appearance after being caught in the rain yesterday. Jack smiled, feeling a touch of youth and vitality. Yes, I am in the prime of my life. While being cautious in my actions as a person, when dealing with life, I can actually be a bit more willful. For example, Jack's gaze swept across her pretty innocent face, and the corners of his mouth raised slightly. In the midst of the subtle romantic atmosphere, Jack flipped through the book in his hand with passing interest. But his consciousness sank deeply, focusing on the heavy armored beast. Inside the cave, the meter-long heavy armored beast, covered in light black armor, slowly opened its eyes, moving its limbs, and leaving deep footprints on the ground with its claws. Although the heavy armored beast was only 1 meter long, due to its high density, it already weighed more than 100 kilograms, and its body was as heavy as if it was cast from steel. 20 meters deep in the cold water of the river, Jack controlled his avatar to swim slowly. Occasionally, groups of fish of different sizes swam by. The heavy armored beast had no interest in these ordinary fish, its target was the mutated fish with mutations on their bodies. After swimming for half an hour, suddenly, a ferocious mutated fish more than 2 meters long appeared in its field of vision. This fish had a cone-shaped head, yellow cheeks, and was covered in palm-sized silvery scales. Its body shone with a silvery light, and its wide-open mouth was full of sharp teeth. The heavy armored beast's eyes lit up and its tail whipped violently, sending the sand on the riverbed surging up as it charged forward. Just as the heavy armored beast launched its attack, the 2-meter-long mutated ferocious fish also noticed it. With its size advantage, the ferocious mutated fish didn't attempt to dodge but instead charged towards the heavy armored beast at an even faster speed. It opened its huge mouth, hoping to bite off the heavy armored beast's head in one bite. Bang! Just as the mutated fish's huge mouth was about to close, the heavy armored beast's claw struck its upper jaw from the side. Under the terrifying force, half of the mutated fish's head collapsed. The mutated fish was killed instantly. Looking at the floating corpse of the mutated fish in the water, the heavy armored beast approached leisurely, hugged its back with both claws, and bit down on its head. Under the terrifying bite force, the ferocious mutated fish's head was crushed. Blood mixed with white spread in the water, making the black heavy armored beast look extremely ferocious. After killing the prey, it was time to eat. Jack controlled the heavy armored beast to tear up the body of the mutated ferocious fish and began devouring it, taking large bites of fish meat. As time went on, with the constant hunting and killing of mutated fish, Jack's consciousness became colder and more ruthless when transforming into the heavy armored beast. He became more decisive and proficient when hunting, feeling no discomfort when shredding and devouring prey. On the contrary, he felt a sense of pleasure and exhilaration after the brutal killing. The heavy armored beast consumed most of the bones and meat of the ferocious mutated fish, including the valuable fish glue. After eating, the heavy armored beast's speed increased at a visible rate, growing a little thicker and longer. It then swam another 10 miles deep into the river before killing another 2-meter-long ordinary mutated fish. It wasn't until the heavy armored beast had eaten and drunk its fill that it returned to the cave to digest. By the window seat, Jack withdrew his consciousness and a flash of cold, violent emotion appeared in his eyes. The whole person's aura suddenly became terrifying. But this feeling was just fleeting. As Jack closed his eyes and opened them again, his gaze had already returned to its usual warmth. Jack pondered and thought, this is an issue that needs some attention. Facing Freya, who had closed her book and looked up, Jack said with curiosity, attention, what should I be paying attention to? Nothing. Jack gave a slight smile and changed the subject, it's almost 6 o'clock, shall we head back together? Okay. The girl nodded. Jack followed Freya as they returned the books to their original place, then, carrying the bag containing his clothes, entered the elevator. At this time, not just them, but other classmates who had been reading also left one after another. In the elevator, as more and more classmates entered, Jack stepped back slightly, shielding Freya, who was standing in the corner, behind him. As a result, the two were standing rather close. Chapter 48. They are so powerful. In the evening, Jack Clark sat cross-legged on his bed, his mind guiding his true strength to circulate continuously along the second layer root of dragon elephant power. He could clearly feel the transparent true strength radiating a suction force as it circulated, forcibly refining and absorbing the free extraordinary energy from his body. Unlike before, it didn't require spirit power to guide it into the body, and its cultivation efficiency was several times faster than before the breakthrough. After refining those free energies, this true strength would grow stronger with each circulation, then return to the Dantian and start a new round. However, unlike the internal power described in martial arts novels that traveled through the meridians with the Dantian as the starting point, the root of true strength was extremely complex. Not only would it move under the fascia and skin, it would also shuttle through muscles and bones, and its passage would temper and strengthen the physique throughout the body. This was why the physique of true martial practitioners gradually strengthened. The dragon elephant power, the main force and defense, had a better tempering effect on the physique. After cultivating it, the explosive power of the muscles was stronger, and the skin became tougher. Almost an hour later, Jack Clark opened his eyes. Phew. Jack Clark exhaled heavily, perceiving the changes after cultivation, and then murmured thoughtfully, this progress is a bit slow. The first layer heaven is mainly meant for tempering the physique and generating true strength. Therefore, you need to refine your physique to about 5 times that of an ordinary person with a limb strength of 300 kilograms to touch the edge of a breakthrough. After breaking through to the second layer heaven, the cultivator's focus will be placed on strengthening true strength until the Dantian is filled, and the tempering of the physique becomes secondary. The physiological limit for the second layer heaven is about 800 kilograms of arm strength. This is not the human biological limit, but the tempering effect limit of the second layer heaven's true strength on the body. Only by breaking through to the third layer heaven can the stronger true strength continue to temper and strengthen the body. But as cultivators don't need to strengthen their physique to the limit, as long as true strength fills the Dantian, continually compressing true strength into a mist to achieve breakthroughs. Therefore, some extreme cultivators will pay less and less attention to strengthening the physique and focus more on the breakthrough of true strength. Because the higher the realm, the more terrifying the power of the true strength that is cultivated, it could even fight by controlling the power of heaven and earth. Compared to high-level cultivators, especially those at the ninth heavens, the increase in body strength of hundreds or thousands of kilograms is negligible. Only those who have been stuck at a realm for several years or even decades will spend energy tempering their physique to the extreme limit of the current realm. Because tempering and strengthening the physique during cultivation will consume some true strength and affect the progress of cultivation. With Lori Parma's teachings in mind, Jack Clark estimated that if he wanted to fill his Dantian with true strength, it might take almost half a year under normal cultivation conditions. Half a year? Huh, Jack sighed as he thought about it. After 2 avatar evolution sessions, his physique had improved and his talent was no less than those geniuses who had breakthroughs within a week by relying on resources. Under such circumstances, it would take half a year to break through to the third layer heaven. So how long would it take for those who establish their foundation in half a month? A month. Once again, Jack felt the difficulties on the path of cultivation. It would take at least half a year for him to break through from the second layer heaven to third layer heaven. What about from the third layer to the fourth layer? Considering the increase in difficulty with each layer heaven's breakthrough, it will take at least 2 years for those with less talent to break through to the third layer under normal cultivation. When he thought of this, Jack couldn't help feeling fortunate. Luckily, he had attribute points that could directly enhance and break through the realm of the cultivation method. The next afternoon, Jack, who had been cultivating his sword skill all morning, ran into Crystal Leinster and Justin Wellen in the cafeteria. They were in line too. Jack, over here, Justin waved at him. When Jack came up behind him, Justin anxiously said, Jack, have you heard? You haven't said anything yet, what am I supposed to have heard? Jack couldn't help but retort. Hey, one thought you knew already. Justin chuckled, then started gossiping. This morning, I heard that Howard Lee, who was ranked second, and Kyle Hawk, who was ranked third, both broke through to the second layer heaven. I heard that Howard Lee achieved the foundation in 3 days and had already reached the limit of the first layer heaven. After coming in second place this time, he directly broke through with the help of the cultivation resources. Jack nodded. I know him. Jack had a deep impression of that formidable student who wielded heavy weapons and stood 2 meters tall. After all, he was the guy who fought with an iron calumny while talking. They got their meals and took their trays to an unoccupied table. After sitting down, Jack Clark looked at the purple-haired girl across the table and asked curiously, Class leader, how long do you think it will take for you to break through? As a genius ranked 10th in the competition, Crystal Leinster was very popular among the freshmen. She was not only beautiful, but also very strong. Crystal Leinster thought for a moment. I used some resources yesterday to strengthen my constitution to the first layer heaven limit. Next I need to nurture and consolidate my true strength. I estimate it will take a few more days. Class leader is amazing. You are about to break through so quickly. While praising Crystal, Jack's tone was very sincere, as if he had completely forgotten that he had broken through to the second layer heaven yesterday. Crystal shook her head. There is nothing to be proud of. One just used some resources to break through ahead of time. Originally, Crystal estimated that she would be able to break through a little over a month after her foundation establishment. Now it was just a week ahead, so she didn't feel anything special about it. Moreover, not only Crystal broke through, over the course of the next week or so, many people ranked in the top 50 also broke through to the second layer heaven. Meanwhile, some rumors about Jack Clark began to circulate. They said the reason he was able to make it into the top 50 was due to his high level of compatibility with the dragon elephant power, which gave him an explosive strength exceeding the limit at the first layer heaven. Even so, he only managed to scrape through to the 49th place. Once the geniuses who cultivated advanced skills broke through to the second layer heaven, his little advantage would be crushed. Moreover, according to the cultivation speed of low-level martial arts, even if he exchanged resources to speed up his cultivation, it would still take him at least a month to break through to the second layer heaven. By that time, not to mention the top 50, the cultivators who practiced advanced martial arts and hadn't made the ranking would have broken through ahead of him. Any one of these people could suppress Jack. His rank among the top 49 in the grade would no longer be an honor, but a subject of mockery for being a title holder without substance. What are your thoughts after hearing all this? Thursday afternoon. In the reading room on the 33rd floor, Freya Louise relayed all the comments she had seen on the official website. Jack thought for a moment and nodded. One don't have any thoughts on it. They are correct. Those people do indeed have a much better cultivation talent than me. Seeing Jack's calm demeanor, unmoved by outside opinions, Freya Louise blinked her beautiful eyes, and asked curiously, aren't you afraid that someone will challenge you after breaking through to the second layer heaven? Although according to school rules, the ranking of the sophomores won't change, if anyone really defeated Jack, their popularity would definitely skyrocket. I'm not scared. Why? Freya Louise asked, puzzled. Jack chuckled. Those ranked above me won't make a move, and out of those who didn't make the ranking, only the ones who cultivated advanced skills pose me any danger. But those people can only get 5 contribution points in a month, which is even fewer than me now, and they don't have the 20% discount permission, so they can't exchange many resources. By the time they break through, I will probably have broken through as well. As for who will win or lose at the same realm, it's still up in the air. Jack didn't tell anyone that he had already broken through because it defied common sense. After all, he had only shown a mediocre level of talent before. Even if he had high compatibility with true martial, it would be too conspicuous, so there was no need to say it. Of course, he wasn't planning to feign weakness to take advantage of others. He simply preferred to act low-key and didn't feel the need to boast about it everywhere. But if anyone provoked him, he wouldn't hesitate to slap them down. Seeing Jack's serene demeanor, unruffled by external influences, Freya Louise couldn't help but laugh. The two of them chatted casually for a while, then each immersed themselves in the atmosphere of reading. Of course, while Jack seemed to be reading, most of his attention was on the heavy armored beast. The menacing unique beast, now grown to 1.3 meters, slowly entered the river, at At. More than a week had passed since Jack broke through to the second layer heaven, and during this time, the heavy armored beast spent every day either hunting or on its way to hunt. As the heavy armored beast continued to grow, becoming increasingly powerful and menacing, Jack noticed that there were fewer and fewer mutated big fish in this stretch of the river, with him often having to swim several miles before encountering one. As a result, just searching for prey each day was a waste of time. Beneath the surface of the river, about 10 meters deep, the heavy armored beast was chewing on some fish meat, its eyes thoughtful. It seems that once the heavy armored beast evolves again, we will have to go looking for food in the sea. Chapter 49. Believers in God can have eternal life. The next morning, Jack Clark just walked into the school not far away when he met an acquaintance. It was Marcus Lee, who had been defeated by him in the ranking competition. As he saw Jack coming, he excitedly said, "Jack, you're finally here. What's up?" Jack looked at him puzzledly. Marcus smirked and said, "I've been waiting for you here today to tell you that I've broken through to the second layer heaven." And then, Marcus was at a loss for words. Don't you feel any pressure?" Jack looked at him strangely. "Why should I feel pressure? Are you going to challenge me to avenge your defeat that day?" "Of course not. Marcus Lee, I'm not the kind of person who takes advantage of others' weakness." Marcus proudly said, "Although I was careless that day, I admit my defeat wholeheartedly." He continued, "I'm here today to tell you that I've already announced on the official website that if anyone wants to challenge you after you break through to the second layer heaven, they'll have to defeat me first." "What kind of development is this?" Jack was confused. Marcus snorted, "As someone who has defeated me in the first layer heaven, those who want to trample you to get ahead would be trampling me too, so one can't let them have their wish. Besides, we've become friends since our fight. You don't have to thank me for such a trivial matter." "No, when did I say I would thank you? Also, when did we become friends?" Jack was a bit lost for a moment. "Wait, why are you so sure that I'll be weaker than you when I break through to the second layer heaven?" Jack looked at Marcus with a strange gaze. During this period, as the heavy armored beast grew, his various attributes were improving, and his physique alone had reached 115 points, with a strength attribute of 120. With that said, his fist strength amplified by dragon elephant power had already surpassed 4,000 kilograms. Under these circumstances, even if these genius students like Marcus break through and their true strength becomes more powerful, Jack still has the confidence to overpower them. There's no way around it, their base attributes were simply too far behind. Marcus said it is a matter of course, I'm a genius who has cultivated advanced skills. My strength has improved greatly after breaking through to the second layer heaven. But don't be discouraged. When we become sophomores, we can take part in trials and have many opportunities to earn contribution points. By then, you can try to accumulate contribution points and exchange them for advanced skills and cultivation resources. Maybe you'll be able to catch up with me one day. Keep it up, Jack. 1'11" be waiting for you up ahead." With that, Marcus left with full confidence, not giving Jack a chance to speak. Jack took a deep breath. Forget it. There's no point getting angry at his idiocy. Jack comforted himself and suppressed the urge to beat Marcus up. "Did you hear? Half of the country of Koroya has fallen." "Yeah, one heard that many people died. Those cultivators wanted to establish the earthly divine church, proclaiming that the day of judgment is coming and that only faith in God can grant eternal life. At. Do you guys think there really are gods in the world? What is a god? A being powerful enough to surpass a social group. We cultivators can become gods through our cultivation. Jack walked into the cultivation room, the discussion about the situation in Koroya filling the air. It had been more than a month since the Koroya unrest, and the situation had not only failed to stabilize but had intensified. The Federation Congress was currently discussing whether to intervene. Under Federation rules, each member state has autonomy under the unified regulations, and only when a major event affects the human federation can the three major countries have an excuse to intervene. I hope it doesn't affect us here, Jack said. He had gotten used to his current life and didn't want it to be disrupted by accidents. Jack, you're here. One of the male students greeted Jack. Jack smiled and nodded back. You guys come so early every day. A student with a few moles on his face shrugged. We can't help it. Our talent is a little worse than others, so we have to work hard. In recent times, Jack's fame had skyrocketed, and he had become close with many classmates in his class. Or rather, it was these classmates who had taken the initiative to get close to him. Not for the purpose of flattering, but because he had won them face as a student with ordinary talent. They talked for a while before starting their cultivation that day. As usual, Jack began practicing his sword skill. Among the students cultivating, Jack stood in the middle of the crowd with his sword, closed his eyes, and instantly entered a focused state. In Jack's void mind, he could faintly see the outlines of three people around him, sending out waves as they practiced. Compared to the progress of dragon elephant power, which improved step by step through cultivation, the heart's eye, which relied on insight, was much slower in its progress. It had been a month since he began practicing, and he could only sense the energy within a range of about 10 meters. At his current rate, Jack didn't know how long it would take to reach the realm described in the sword skill introduction, where one could sense the malice in their surroundings with a thought. Time seemed to fly by, and before he knew it, several days had passed. It had been more than half a month since the ranking competition on the 17th of October. Thanks to the stimulation of that competition, many freshmen had been encouraged to establish their foundation, and senior 1 students who practiced cultivation now make up almost half of the freshman class. This ratio was much higher than in past years. In previous years, there were only 1/3 who practiced cultivation as freshmen. Moreover, half of them would choose to give up due to the slow progress of cultivation during their sophomore or senior years, and only 1/10 of them would graduate after breaking through to the third layer heaven. And that was only in recent years. You have to know that in the era when the foundation establishment method was not popularized, about 10 years ago, only one in many dozens of students were able to cultivate each year. You could say that back then, everyone who could cultivate was a genius, and they were all very strong by now. Like the martial cultivation teachers we have now. At noon, as Jack looked at the bustling canteen, he chose a less crowded window to line up. But as soon as he lined up, Justin Wellen joined him. Justin excitedly patted Jack's shoulder and enthusiastically said, Jack, did you miss me after not seeing each other for a few days? Jack turned back and casually replied, what do one need to miss you for? Introduce me to a girlfriend. Are you sure you want me to introduce you to a girlfriend? Didn't you say women would only hinder your sword drawing speed? Justin's eyes lit up. He knew many beautiful girls. These days, people had been coming to him daily to inquire about Jack's information. If Jack was willing, Justin wouldn't mind helping him make the introduction. You actually took it seriously. Jack was speechless and changed the subject. However, you didn't mention it, but I haven't seen you much lately. We're brothers, man, good brothers. You being like this really breaks my heart. Justin looked so aggrieved that Jack couldn't help but shiver. Stop looking at me like that, or I fear I won't be able to hold back from giving you a punch. As he spoke, Jack took a step back. All right, no more joking. Jack, I've finally broken through to the second layer heaven. Really? Congratulations, that's amazing. Jack praised him sincerely. However, Justin found it suspicious for some reason. He felt that something was off. Chapter 50. Dominating the world. Justin Wellen was his best friend at school and had been very helpful in the early days, so Jack was genuinely happy about his breakthrough. However, looking at a smiling Jack, Justin said somewhat speechlessly, I was truly happy. After all, among freshmen, only about 30 have managed to reach the second layer heaven. But just now, I suddenly found myself unable to share the joy. Why? Jack looked at him, puzzled. Justin leaned in and said quietly, Jack, when did you manage to reach the second layer heaven? A month ago, Justin noticed a subtle change in Jack. Jack seemed to emanate a faint oppressive aura, almost as though he had become much stronger. At that time, he asked Jack about it, but Jack simply dismissed his query. Therefore, Justin didn't think more of it. But who would have guessed that in the subsequent ranking competition, Jack demonstrated absolute strength overpowering many geniuses, a sight so shocking that Justin froze at the moment. And just now, he felt that same subtle oppressive aura from Jack. It was so familiar and disturbing. This time, he wouldn't make a mistake. This guy had become stronger again, even putting pressure on him who had reached the second layer heaven. Seeing this, Jack no longer hid the truth and laughed. Not long, I just made the breakthrough yesterday. At first, because his breakthrough was too quick, he didn't want to publicize it. Now, half a month has passed. As an unconventional genius, his breakthrough into the second layer heaven could be seen as surprising, but also entirely plausible. Upon hearing Jack's admission, a look of, I knew it, crossed Justin's face. I knew it, I was not mistaken. How did you tell one have made a breakthrough, Mr. Willard? Jack looked confused. After the breakthrough, he had always concealed his aura using his spirit power. Up until now, no one realized that he was already in the second layer heaven. Because I have been sensitive since I was a kid, especially to changes in aura. Justin looked rather smug as he discussed his talent. Jack didn't feel like talking anymore. It was only after a great deal of effort and using enhancements to finally cultivate the heart's eye realm, which provided a keen sense of impending danger and malicious gazes. However, this guy turned out to be naturally sensitive to changes in aura. This ability might not be overwhelmingly powerful, but it could come as a surprise in certain situations, making it another form of unconventional talent. While they were carrying their meal trays and looking for a table, Freya Louise, not far from them, waved them over. Just as Jack and Justin sat down with Freya, Vera Lee, who was sitting with her, curiously asked, "What were you two talking about just now? You've been chatting for quite a while." Despite spending the last 2 months voraciously eating, this short-haired girl who had been somewhat cute is now visibly overweight, even as she spoke with a chicken drumstick in her mouth. Justin nonchalantly replied, "Nothing much, we were just discussing that both Jack and I have reached the second layer heaven." "What? Both of you have made a breakthrough?" Cough, cough. Vera was so startled she almost choked on her chicken leg. Justin glanced at her, unable to hide the smugness on his face. "Of course, I'm a genius after all. The second layer heaven isn't a big deal, just took me about a month and a half." But at this time, no one was paying attention to him. Vera turned to Jack, surprised. "Jack, when did you make a breakthrough? How did you manage it so quickly?" "You should know, she made the foundation establishment 2 days earlier than Jack, but she is still some way off from reaching the second layer heaven. She doesn't even know how long it would take for her to make the breakthrough. I made a breakthrough yesterday due to some fortuitous circumstances. Likely related to the dragon-elephant power compatibility." Jack explained with a smile. In addition to the contribution reward points for the top 50 and the 20% discount per mission, one also exchanged some resources to speed up the process. "So that's how it is, but you are still amazing," Vera said, somewhat envious. Upon hearing Jack Clark saying that he had made a breakthrough yesterday, Freya Louise, standing nearby, slightly chuckled and revealed a light smile. She was not completely convinced. "With the class leader breaking through, and you guys also breaking through, all of us are still stuck at the same stage, not knowing when we can break through to second layer heaven," Vera Lee expressed with a face full of sorrow. "Create a short, fictitious cough. I should be close to." Freya Louise coughed and removed herself from the group that was still stuck at the ground. "What, Freya, are you also about to break through? How is that possible?" Vera Lee was taken aback again, her eyes wide in disbelief. Freya Louise brushed her hair behind her ears and murmured, "Ever since I found the reading method to improve the compatibility, my cultivation speed has increased a lot." Thinking about Freya Louise's cultivation method, which only needs to read the Taoist and Buddhist classics to improve the compatibility of cultivation skills, not only Vera Lee, but even Jack Clark himself felt a bit envious. "So, I'm the only one most miserable. You guys are too bullying." Vera Lee was a bit frustrated. Justin Wellen suddenly said, "Hey, Jack, since we have all broke through to second layer heaven, would you be interested in a skirmish?" "Are you sure?" Jack Clark looked at him strangely, wondering why he was seeking a beating. Justin Wellen confidently said, "I admit you are very strong, but now, we all have broken through to the second layer heaven and condensed true strength. I don't believe you can suppress me. You should know that this time it hasn't been a simple breakthrough. After knowing that I practiced the Black Tortoise Solid Earth skill, my brother especially sent me a bottle of Giant Beast Essence and Blood. Giant Beast Essence Blood. This time, not only Jack Clark, but even Freya Louise and Vera Lee were all surprised. Anything that has the name Giant Beast is very expensive, even the ordinary Giant Beast Essence and Blood. It starts from 50 contribution points on the school exchange list. Justin Wellen chuckled and said, "It is a common giant beast named Mountain Giant Tortoise. When I broke through, I absorbed its essence blood, and all aspects of me have improved substantially. Normally, the true strength increase for breaking through to second layer heaven with advanced skills is about 3 times, but my defense has increased by 5 times, isn't it scary? Aside from this, my strength has also greatly increased after absorbing the giant beast essence and blood. If I encounter that guy Marcus Lee now, I am confident that he cannot break my defense." Added Nobleman at. Jack Clark suddenly asked, "What about Howard Lee?" The complacent smile on Justin Welland's face suddenly froze. Snicker. Freya Louise and Vera Lee couldn't help but laugh. Especially Freya Louise, she had witnessed the scene where Justin Welland was hammered down by Howard Lee. In the middle of the banter, the 4 of them finished their meal. After a short rest, they arrived at the cultivation room on the 3rd floor. At this time, everyone was taking a nap, so there weren't many people. Jack Clark and Justin Welland stood more than 10 meters apart, whilst the audience, Freya Louise and Vera Lee, were much further away. Justin Welland licked his lips, excitedly saying, "Jack, I have always been your elder brother. Last time in the contest I suppressed you, and this time will be the same. Today, I, Justin Welland, will rise from here and dominate the South Sky Martial Height era." Looking at Justin Welland, who suddenly became overly excited, Jack Clark and the others, who were far away, felt somewhat speechless. Especially Jack Clark, he didn't know when this guy became his elder brother. Who was older was still uncertain. However, Jack Clark didn't deny that he was suppressed during the last contest. But today, thinking of this, Jack Clark's eyes gradually revealed expectation. He was really looking forward to see the expression on Justin Welland's face after being suppressed by him. At the same time, he was also looking forward to the power of advanced skills after breaking through to second layer heaven. It was his first time fighting with someone who was also at the second layer heaven since his breakthrough. With the cultivation of true strength, the characteristics of each true martial arts will gradually be revealed. The power explosion of the main strength will be stronger, the speed of the speed classes will be faster, let alone the defense of the golden body. At the second layer heaven, it can ignore ordinary swords and spears. Chapter 51. Overbearing. This time, both of them used weapons. Justin Welland still carried that person height, heavy shield with more than a dozen centimeters of sharp spikes all over it, looking like a hedgehog. Here it comes. With a low roar, a majestic and heavy aura erupted from Justin Welland, and a faint earth-colored light emerged on his skin. Boom. Justin Welland charged towards Jack Clark with a thunderous roar, and the ground shook slightly with each step he took. The onlookers seemed to see a gigantic turtle charging forward. Jack Clark was instantly excited, feeling his blood boil. Roar. Accompanied by a faint elephant roar, an explosive force burst from Jack Clark's body, and he grabbed the blade with both hands, transforming into a blurred shadow and shot out in an instant. At this moment, his speed exceeded 40 meters per second, and he collided fiercely with the shield, the straight blade carrying terrifying power as it slashed on the shield. Boom. The air exploded, like the sound of a giant bell. Jack didn't activate his true strength for this attack, relying solely on his normal power burst. But with the added kinetic energy from his speed, the power of that blade was at least close to 3,000 kilograms. It struck the shield, sending out sparks and emanating a powerful airwave. But Justin Welland stood like a formidable black tortoise solid earth defense, his feet steady on the ground as if rooted, not even swaying in the slightest. Jack's attack was perfectly deflected by Justin's shield, forming a triangle on the ground. Under the mysterious martial thick earth true skill, his aura connected to the earth beneath him. The concrete floor connected them, keeping him from being moved as long as he stood still. To shake him, Jack's burst of power would need to be at least twice his own, otherwise, he wouldn't budge at all. Whoosh. Jack's figure flashed to the side of Justin, the straight blade of his knife tearing through the air, creating an ear-piercing wind due to its incredible speed. Boom. The furious blade was again blocked by the spiked shield, unable to shake Justin in the slightest despite the explosion of stray sparks. Clang. 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 Jack circled around Justin, slashing several times, but all were blocked by the rapidly spinning shield. From a distance, it looked like Jack's blade was purposely striking the shield, strangely enough. I told you, I'm really strong now. Amidst triumphant laughter, Justin Wellen charged forward with his shield, like a giant turtle flipping over, as a ferocious wave of countershock suddenly erupted. Boom! The shield and straight blade collided fiercely, and Jack Clark managed to hold Justin back with both hands on his blade. His figure remained as steady as ever. How is this possible? Your strength. Justin Wellen was somewhat surprised. Jack Clark smiled and nodded, praising, not bad, your strength has indeed improved a lot after your breakthrough, both in defense and power burst. Next, I'm going to get serious. With that, Jack Clark's true strength erupted from within, and his muscles swelled under the stimulation of true strength, as a wild aura shot up to the sky. At this moment, he was like an enraged giant elephant. Boom! With the support of true strength, Jack Clark clasped the blade with both hands, and in an instant, the air in front of the blade's edge began to glow red due to the friction from its speed. Boom! At the moment of the blade and shield meeting, a muffled thunderous roar erupted, and Justin Wellen felt an overwhelming force engulf him, causing him to involuntarily retreat several steps. Each step caused a slight vibration on the ground, as the majority of the force was channeled to it through his cultivation technique. Boom! Without giving Justin Wellen a chance to react, Jack Clark charged forward with a step, the ground shaking and the raging wind roaring, as he once again slashed at the center of the shield. The overbearing power sent Justin back several steps once again. Boom! 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 Jack Clark took one step and one swing, directly forcing Justin Wellen to retreat with his unrivaled and furious strength. The faint earthy glow on his body surface constantly shook and grew darker. Continuously pushed back by the terrifying strength, Justin Wellen's arms became numb, with an expression as if he had just seen a ghost. At this moment, Jack Clark's aura was extremely fierce. 17 consecutive strikes forced Justin Wellen to retreat 30 meters from head to tail until he was close to the wall before stopping. Looking at the beautiful youth standing with his sword in the center of the arena, and his black hair flying wildly, the distant frail Louise's eyes shone. At nobleman at. Vera Lee, on the other hand, opened her mouth wide in disbelief. Wasn't it said that once everyone had their breakthrough to second layer heaven, Jack Clark, who practiced low-level martial arts, would appear mediocre in strength? Is this mediocrity? Even Justin Wellen, who has absorbed the giant beast essence and blood and is stronger on all sides than an ordinary genius, was beaten without a chance to fight back. Mr. Willard, do you want to continue? No, let's not fight anymore. Justin Wellen trembled as he put down his shield. As his true strength dissipated, he felt a slight soreness all over his body. Phew, this feels great. Jack Clark took a long breath, feeling incredibly refreshed at this moment. This was the first time he had unleashed his full strength without restraint since his breakthrough to second layer heaven. Among his classmates, only Justin Wellen, the mysterious marshal, could withstand such overbearing slashes from him. In normal conditions, with the sharpness of an alloy straight blade and Jack Clark's speed and strength, even a small car in front of him would be split in half with one swoop. As for why he didn't continue to slash a few more times, it was because he had run out of true strength. This is the drawback of low-level martial arts, the true strength cultivated is not enough. From his initial breakthrough which lasted 10 moves, to half a month later, he can now only unleash his full power 17 times. But looking at Justin Wellen's appearance, it seemed like he has abundant true strength remaining after withstanding those slashes, just that he was frightened by Jack Clark's violent aura. Of course, this doesn't mean that Justin Wellen is stronger than him. It just shows that the various advantages of high-level martial arts are significant, including amplification and true strength endurance. If it were a life-and-death battle, Jack Clark would be confident in killing him within 5 strikes. After all, there is no need for a frontal clash when overwhelming the opponent in both speed and strength. It would be more efficient to sneak attack and kill Justin Wellen from behind while he's retreating continuously. Justin Wellen rubbed his shoulders and said helplessly, Jack, why is your strength so great? Wasn't your breakthrough just 2 days ago? It should be because of the dragon elephant power. My strength has grown stronger and more overbearing as I practice this skill. Therefore, my strength has also become stronger after my breakthrough. Jack Clark casually found an excuse. Justin Wellen didn't believe it. Come on, my black tortoise solid earth skill also focuses on defense and strength, and I have even absorbed giant beast essence and blood, but it's not as exaggerated as yours. Jack Clark shook his head, then it should be because of my compatibility with the dragon elephant power. I'm not very clear myself. Justin Wellen had nothing to say in response to this reason. After all, the true martial pact is indeed a universal excuse. Haven't the girls with average talent just flipped through a book to catch up with the practice speed of this so-called genius? Among the freshmen, there is also a freak, which is the second place Flowered Lee. He has a perfect match with the high-level martial arts he practiced, and his strength is also exaggerated. Before breaking through the second layer heaven, he was already using an iron column weighing several hundred kilograms as his weapon. Thinking of this, Justin Wellen regretted, if I had known your strength was so abnormal, I wouldn't have sparred with you. The repair cost for the weapons this time will be at least a few thousand. Both of their weapons were made of F-grade alloy. Under Jack Clark's 17 full-powered strikes, his shield had already been slashed with many deep marks and was full of dents. Even some of the sharp spikes were broken off. Similarly, under the mutual impact, Jack Clark's straight blade also curled inward with many notches appearing on the edge. This situation can only be alleviated when true strength could cover the weapon later on. Jack Clark's eyes lit up. Mr. Willard, are you going to repair your weapon? By the way, can you help me repair my knife too? All right. Knowing Jack Clark's financial situation, Justin Wellen agreed readily, even though it seemed like he was just being suppressed moments ago. Chapter 52. Entering the Sea Mouth. Unfortunately, Jack Clark, your sword skill and primary cultivation method don't complement each other. Also, it seems that your sword skill is just at the beginner level, not even breaking through the first layer. Otherwise, with your power explosion and agility, your strength would be much stronger. At past 4 in the afternoon, in the 33rd floor reading room, Freya Louise, holding a sutra of great compassion, said with a bit of regret. Dragon elephant power is mainly focused on strength and defense, but the low-level martial arts of Heart's Eye Bright Knife makes it difficult for Jack to fully demonstrate his advantages, not to mention that his sword skills are just at the beginner level. In contrast, Justin Wellen, with his Black Tortoise Solid Earth skill, which has a built-in shield defense combat method, has greatly increased his combat power after just breaking through. Similarly, other high-level cultivation method practitioners also have their complementary battle techniques. Their strength surpasses that of ordinary people after breaking through the second layer heaven. For this issue, Jack just smiled faintly and said indifferently, "It's okay, I'm already very satisfied with my current strength. After all, there's no such thing as a perfect situation in the world. Thinking too much won't change the current situation, so steady cultivation is enough." Freya praised him. "Jack, one find that your mindset is very suitable for the path of cultivation." "Not at all, you're not bad either. You're silently about to break through the second layer heaven." Jack complimented her back. "Why do one feel like we're just blowing smoke at each other's accomplishments?" "I'm just stating the facts." Jack responded with an innocent expression. Freya smiled and lowered her head to read her book. Seeing this, Jack also smiled and picked up a book to flip through casually. He seemed to enjoy this time every afternoon, whether it was habit or something else. With a beauty by his side, both were reading without disturbing each other. This atmosphere made him feel very relaxed and comfortable. Feeling the warmth of the sunlight from the window on his body, Jack's consciousness suddenly sank, and a unique beast hidden deep in the riverbed more than 30 meters underwater opened its eyes. Gurgle, gurgle, at Nobleman at. The black heavy armored beast, which had grown to 1.5 meters long with the thickest part as thick as its waist, spat out a bubble and whipped its tail to stir up the mud. With its heavy armor, erect dorsal fin, sturdy limbs, and red feather horns on both sides of its head that spread like wings, the heavy armored beast now looked even more ferocious. After eating all the mutated fish in the riverside surroundings within a radius of tens of miles, Jack controlled the heavy armored beast to swim downstream in the river for the past 2 days, reaching the mouth of the sea more than 100 kilometers away. As the mouth of the sea approached, the width and depth of the river surface increased, and the number of fish also increased, such as. From a distance, a ferocious mutated fish shot towards the heavy armored beast at an astonishing speed, its fang-teeth-filled mouth viciously biting at the heavy armored beast's neck. Under normal conditions, these ferocious mutated fish would use their explosive speed to tear their prey apart with the kinetic energy of their instant burst. But today, the moment the fish's mouth bit the heavy armored beast's neck and the upper and lower jaws collided with the thick scale armor, a crisp click sounded. When the kinetic energy failed to tear its prey apart, the force reacted on itself, and half of the fish's lower jaw broke under the impact. Boom! Water splashed all around. The heavy armored beast swung its front claws, hitting the mutated fish's head with a terrifying force, causing its head to collapse, shatter, and blood mixed with white substance splattering everywhere. This was the heavy armored beast's hunting method, luring enemies to attack with its terrifying defense and killing them in an instant with a counterattack. As for why it chooses this mode, of course, it's because it's too slow. With its increasing size and stronger defense, the heavy armored beast's weight had reached an astonishing level. Even if the heavy armored beast could exert 100 times its strength, it was still affected by gravity, making its speed and agility in the water no match for these streamlined fish. Under the surging river surface, as the heavy armored beast tore and chewed its food, the thick scent of blood spread, attracting many small fish about the size of a finger. Every time the heavy armored beast chewed, some scraps of flesh and blood splattered out from between its teeth, drawing swarms of small fish. Occasionally, a small fish would be swallowed by the heavy armored beast, but it couldn't stop their frenzy. As the heavy armored beast was finishing off a ferocious fish that was more than 2 meters long, it suddenly paused and looked into the distance. About 10 meters away in the blurry river water, a huge shadow circled around, seemingly observing the heavy armored beast, and emanated a faint sense of danger. This was the first time the heavy armored beast had encountered such a dangerous feeling since it had been released into the water. The heavy armored beast couldn't help but release the fish head it was holding, its muscles tensed, and the 3 pairs of red feathered horns on its head opened, ready to attack. However, seemingly feeling that the heavy armored beast was not an easy opponent, the 6-meter-long creature circled around for a bit before disappearing into the depths of the water. It was not until the mutated fish disappeared that the vigilance in the heavy armored beast's eyes gradually dissipated. One didn't expect such a ferocious mutated fish to be lurking so close to the mouth of the river. I need to be more careful. As he contemplated, Jack moved his consciousness, controlling the heavy armored beast to swim towards the shore a few kilometers away, preparing to dig a nest to settle down first. Although there were some mutated fish here that gave him a sense of danger, the abundant food also met the growth needs of his avatar, so Jack naturally wouldn't leave. On the way to the shore, the heavy armored beast hunted another mutated sea wolf-like fish over 2 meters long for food. Having eaten its fill, Jack controlled the heavy armored beast to dig a new hole on the riverbank before slowly withdrawing his attention, only to find the girl opposite him watching him. "What's wrong? Is there something on my face?" Jack asked, touching his cheek in confusion. Freya calmly looked away, whispering, "Nothing, it's just getting late, and you were spacing out, so I was wondering if I should wake you up. It's almost 6 o'clock already. Time flies so fast." Jack glanced at the clock on the wall and couldn't help but sigh. At that moment, Freya suddenly asked, "By the way, Jack, are you free this Sunday?" Jack was puzzled. "Why, what's up?" Freya nodded slightly. "During cultivation this afternoon, the class leader said that the 100 acres of lotus flowers at Moon Lake are in full bloom, and he's planning to organize a group outing on Sunday. Aside from the 5 of us in our club, Shirley Lesser, the class leader's sister, is also going. She asked me to see if you wanted to join." Faced with this question, Jack neither agreed nor disagreed but only smiled and looked at the girl opposite him. "Well, do you want me to go?" Freya's gaze flickered, and she casually said softly, "I think you can go take a look. We've all been cultivating since the beginning of the semester, and everyone's a bit mentally exhausted. We can treat this as a relaxing trip, so we can continue cultivating with a better mindset afterward. What do you think?" Jack nodded. "You make sense." The girl's eyes sparkled. "So, are you going?" Jack nodded affirmatively. "Yes, after all, even if I don't give face to the class leader, one have to give face to you, Freya." At this response, the girl just smirked and turned her head away, her eyes filled with laughter. Chapter 53. It's a pity it's not you. In the midst of Jack's busy days of attending school, cultivating his avatar, and controlling his secondary character's eating, a few days passed by in a flash. On October 21st, Sunday, it was sunny. At 8:30 in the morning, Jack didn't wear his school uniform today. Instead, he wore a white t-shirt, gray trousers, and white flat shoes, exuding a relaxed vibe. Glenn, who was lying on the sofa playing with his mobile phone, asked curiously, "Bro, are you going out?" Jack nodded. "Yeah, one have an appointment with friends to see lotus flowers. At Nobleman at. Glenn's eyes lit up immediately and he sat up. "Guys or girls? Is Sister Freya Louise there?" What kind of reaction is that? Jack was speechless. Glenn chuckled. "I'm just concerned about you, bro. Just tell me if you're going with Sister Freya Louise or not." "She's there." "Good. Have fun, bro. I'm going to a friend's house to play later." Glenn urged Jack to leave, making Jack shake his head. Young but thinking a lot. Jack waited for a few minutes at the train station before taking the bus to the meeting point. Moon Lake, located on the east suburban of the city, was a scenic area consisting of several lakes of various sizes. Every year when the lotus flowers bloom, many people come to visit. When Jack arrived at the entrance of the scenic area, he found that he was the last to arrive. Crystal Leinster, Justin Wellen, Freya Louise, and Sawyer Levin and Vera Lee were already waiting for him. In addition to them, there were Mandy Leinster and 3 other people, 1 male and 2 females, whom he had met during the ranking competition. Jack felt embarrassed and apologized. Sorry, the bus was delayed today. Class leader Sherry Lesser didn't mind and said, It's fine, we just arrived. The gathering time was set at 10 o'clock. You're not late since there are still a few minutes to spare. Today, Sherry Lesser wore a white short-sleeved t-shirt and tight jeans. Her waist was thin and her legs were long and straight. Her slightly curly purple hair was tied at the back of her head with a hairpin. Coupled with her stunningly beautiful face, she looked dainty and efficient, exuding the aura of a beautiful young girl. The others also dressed casually. For example, Justin Wellen and Sawyer Levin were like Jack, wearing t-shirts, casual pants, and sneakers. Compared to the male students, the female students' outfits were much more attractive. For example, Freya wore a double-layered dress today, with a transparent white outer layer and a red fitted t-shirt underneath, showing off her slim waist and full chest. The lower part of her outfit was a pair of straight women's capri pants, revealing her fair ankles and delicate feet clad in silver high-heeled sandals. As usual, her hair was tied back with a butterfly ribbon. A few strands of hair hung in front of her forehead, revealing her fair and exquisite face. She also wore a silver crystal necklace around her neck and a pair of silver butterfly earrings. Under the sunlight, she seemed to be shining. Jack found her delicate and beautiful attire today surprisingly breathtaking. Seeing Jack's gaze, Freya was a little shy, averting her eyes and pretending to casually brush her hair behind her ear. Before turning her head slightly. At this moment, a girl with the same stunning face as Sherry Lesser but with blue hair tips, walked over and smiled. Student Clark, hello. I am Mandy Leinster from Class 9. Unlike Sherry Lesser, known for her cool temperament, decisive actions, and queen-like demeanor, Mandy's voice was gentle, just like her attire. She wore a blue and white striped dress, with her soft hair draped over her shoulders. Her entire being exuded a gentle and stunning aura, making people feel comfortable. Seeing her take the initiative to greet him, Jack naturally also smiled. Hello. It's an honor to finally meet you. I've long admired Mandy. Why is that? Mandy blinked her beautiful eyes, curious. Because. Cough. Cough. As Jack was about to say that he had heard of her reputation for a long time, Justin Wellen next to him coughed twice, making Jack change his words, because of the relation with the class leader. We've long heard that the class leader has a sister who, like her, has outstanding talent and is beautiful, and they both made it into the top 50 freshmen. Facing Jack Clark's praise, Mandy Leinster smiled gently and introduced her companions. The somewhat beautiful female student was called Maria Jenkins, and the male student was Laurent Courtley. After everyone got acquainted, class leader Sherry Lesser gave out 9 tickets to the group, and they lined up to enter the scenic area. Wow, so many lotuses. As soon as they entered the scenic area, Vera Lee exclaimed in amazement, seeing countless lotus leaves spreading out on the large and small lakes up ahead, with white, red, and pink lotus flowers swaying gently. Among the boundless sea of lotus leaves and flowers, wooden bridges connected in all directions, filled with tourists coming to enjoy the scenery. Such beautiful scenery made everyone feel refreshed and relaxed. Let's hurry and go see the pink flower sea over there. I brought a camera. I brought one too. Let's take lots of beautiful photos. Compared to the more restrained boys, even Freya Louise was excited upon seeing such scenery, and she jogged over to follow Sherry and the others. A group of girls laughing and playing together was quite eye-catching, especially when there were a pair of tall, beautiful twins among them. Apart from that, there was also the equally beautiful and delicate Freya Louise, so many high-quality girls together became a part of the scenery as well. Justin Wellen approached Jack Clark. Jack, do you have any feelings of infatuation? What infatuation? Jack pretended not to understand. Stop pretending. Jack, aren't you attracted to class leader and her sister? They're twins, and they're both so beautiful. At this point, Justin chuckled lasciviously, appearing somewhat lewd. Jack was speechless. Justin, can you not be so lewd? And do I have to be attracted to them just because they're beautiful? Can't I just appreciate them with an admiring gaze? Also, we're only in senior 1, and we've just started cultivating. Shouldn't we focus our hearts and minds on cultivation now? Justin disagreed somewhat. Jack, what's wrong with being in senior 1? Don't high school juniors count as men? Jack was somewhat interested. All right, they count as men. So what? Are you planning to chase after the class leader and her sister? Justin quickly shook his head. No, I'm not. Why not? Jack was a bit surprised. Because I know my own worth. The class leader and her sister are too beautiful, they're not my type. Then why did you ask me if one was infatuated? Jack was speechless. Justin reasoned. Because I think you can pull it off, Jack. If I were as handsome as you, I would have chased after class leader's younger sister a long time ago. To be honest, ever since one met you on the first day of school, I've felt that you and the class leader make a good couple. Justin urged. Seriously, one think your chances of success in pursuing the class leader are pretty high. Jack was speechless. Why do you have that feeling? Because you're so handsome that even I, a man, am a bit jealous. Faced with this reasoning, Jack didn't know how to refute it for a while. But did he really think he was that handsome? Jack was a bit doubtful. Although he felt he was quite handsome every day when he looked in the mirror, he didn't think it was that exaggerated, was it? Wait, if you were as handsome as me, why wouldn't you pursue the class leader? Jack reacted and changed the topic. Justin looked at Jack strangely. Isn't that obvious? Class leader has a terrible temper. If I were you, I'd definitely choose the gentle-natured Mandy Leinster. Why is it me again? Jack was speechless. Because you're handsome. Faced with this reasoning, Jack was at a loss for words for the time being. Chapter 54. Huge changes. After teasing and chatting, Jack Clark and Justin Wellen caught up with the lively group. A crowd of youngsters frolicked through the sea of lotus flowers. When Crystal and the others had taken nearly all their pictures, it was already noon. Everyone found a somewhat fancy restaurant in the scenic area to solve the lunch problem, and as for the bill, it was generously taken care of by Justin Wellen. After lunch, the afternoon was free to spend. The summer sun was blazing, so Justin Wellen together with Laurent Courtley and Sawyer Levin found a fishing spot under the shade of a lakeside pavilion. Crystal and the others girls went off somewhere else. As for Jack Clark, he crossed the walkway over the lake to a small island in the middle. A large tree was planted in the center of the island, its shade covering more than 10 meters around it. Underneath the tree, a lawn was spread out, the lush grass and gentle breeze making it a perfect place surrounded by lotus flowers. This spot was ideal for a nap. However, just as Jack was about to close his eyes under the tree, another figure came and sat down next to him. It was Freya Louise. After sitting down, she brought out a simple easel from her backpack and set it up, followed by a folding drawing board, paintbrush, and portable color palette. Her not-so-large backpack looked like a treasure chest, surprisingly devoid of cosmetics or anything girl-related. Curious, Jack asked, one didn't expect you to have this hobby. How well can you paint? The young girl pursed her lips lightly and laughed, modestly responding, it's fine, one guess. It's been my hobby since I was young. Feeling a touch drowsy, Jack lounged lazily and said, then go ahead and draw, I'll take a nap. He then closed his eyes and fell asleep under the gentle breeze. At Nobleman at. The girl tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, glanced at Jack laying on the grass, then took off her shoes, sat cross-legged, held a paintbrush in her hand, and then started looking around for inspiration. In a somewhat blurry state, Jack did not wake up until around 2 p.m. As he opened his eyes, the girl was still sitting cross-legged beside him, completely engrossed in her painting. The painting on the easel was in its final stages, featuring vivid green lotus leaves and white and pink lotus flowers in full bloom, giving off an authentic feel. Even an outsider like Jack found Freya Louise's painting pleasing. After looking at it for a while, Jack closed his eyes again. This time, however, he wasn't sleeping but was sinking his consciousness into his heavy armored beast avatar. On the chaotic stone-banked riverbank, a 1.7-meter long, crocodile-looking creature, even more ferocious than a real crocodile, was slowly moving from a burrow underwater. With continuous growth and slaughter, the dark unique beast gradually became more dominant and fierce, gradually accruing an aura of ferocity and tyranny. Under Jack's control, the heavy armored beast began its hunt of the day. Jack. While Jack was wreaking havoc on the rivers as the mutated beast, he vaguely heard someone calling his name and reopened his eyes. Seeing him awake, Freya Louise waved her phone. The class leader is calling for a gathering. What time is it? Jack was still a bit groggy. 4:30. That's soon. Jack sat up and was handed a painting. The young girl's mouth curled into a light laugh. I'm giving you this painting as a memento of today's outing. Thank you. Jack took a brief pause and then accepted it. Looking at it in his hand, he realized he had mistaken it for the initial lotus painting that Freya had been working on. On the A3 paper, there were blue skies, white clouds, and a small island in a lotus-covered lake. Under the shade of a tree on the island, a youth was taking a leisurely nap, with a girl seated close by, capturing the beautiful lakeside view on her easel. In the painting, whether it was the lotus leaves, the island, or even the figure of the boy was clearly visible, as if they were all real and jumping off the page. Jack Clark exclaimed, "What impressive drawing skills." The girl who was packing up turned her head to look at him, a smile in the corners of her eyes. She then folded the easel and put it in the bag, carefully stowing away the color palette as well. After about 10 minutes, the two of them gathered with a crowd of cheerful youths at the entrance of the scenic area, concluding the day's visit. Monday. Jack was about to go to his cultural class as usual, but the moment he walked into the classroom, he sensed something was amiss. The classmates were whispering to each other, discussing something quietly. Jack sat down at his seat, then tapped the shoulder of Justin Wellen who was in front of him. He curiously asked, "Mr. Willard, what happened?" Justin turned around and asked surprisingly, "Jack, don't you know?" "Know what?" Jack was confused. Justin lowered his voice. "The news last night, the official report states that Koroya has been occupied. The local cultivators have overpowered the present rulers. Also, the cultivators revealed their affiliation with the evil god sect. They claim they want to establish an earthly divine nation for some god named Akunis. Currently, the Federation is discussing a proposal to send military troops to crush these evil god sect cultists. The military expedition is likely to take off by the end of the month. These big events don't seem to have anything to do with us, do they?" Jack felt puzzled. He hadn't heard about all this, partly because he was not in the habit of watching news, but majorly because he spent his time on cultivation and transforming into a unique beast for hunting after returning home the day before. "It doesn't." Justin nodded and said, "But given the pressing international situation, shouldn't we respond correspondingly too? After all, we are the future buds of the Federation." Jack was speechless. Initially, Jack thought all this was too distantly related for the students to worry about. However, within a couple of days, as the Federation passed the proposal to send troops to Koroya, rumors started surfacing in the school. It was stated that the authorities of the school were studying whether to send some freshers along with the Federation's troops to Koroya for late-period practice. Jack didn't pay attention to those rumors. As always, he only focused on attending school, cultivation, controlling the heavy armored beast's feeding, and was steadily increasing his strength every day. October 31st. In the personal cultivation room, Jack's muscles were slightly swollen. He seemed to have conspicuous elephant lines on his body. Frightful oppressive breath emanated from him, making him appear like an enraged elephant. Suddenly, Jack sped up, causing a raging wind to blow as he rushed in front of the tester. His punch sped out with the force of a cannonball. Bang! Under the fierce power released, the air was directly blasted. The strength tester set in the wall vibrated so violently that the numbers on it began to climb crazily. Finally, it stopped at a terrifying number: 7,000 kilograms. It had been almost a month since he had broken through into the second layer heaven. Although the dragon elephant power was slow in advancing, the avatar was continuously evolving and growing. At this point, Jack's physique attribute had reached more than 130 points, and his strength attribute had even crossed over to 140. This was equivalent to being 14 times that of an average person. With his terrifying physique, his basic arm strength alone could reach an astonishing 1,200 kilograms, far exceeding the second layer heaven's limit of 800 kilograms. With the enhancements of true strength and the impact carried by the burst of speed, his full force strike could cause a dreadful force of 7 tons. In such a situation, even if a huge elephant were in front of him, its skull would be smashed by a single punch, its body overturned. Jack seemed like a humanoid beast. Whoosh! Jack exhaled, slowly suppressing the bubbling chi blood inside his body. Seeing the data on the tester, he broke into a smile. Chapter 55. We are all ordinary people. November 1st, the day when the monthly contribution points are deposited. Jack Clark has been looking forward to this day for a long time. Because with the contribution points, he can exchange them for a life crystal, and with a life crystal, he can convert attribute points to enhance his cultivation method progress. Helplessly, Jack Clark has realized that his innate talent for comprehension cultivation methods is truly ordinary. His dragon elephant power is steadily improving after reaching the second layer heaven, but his mind's eye bright knife has been stuck at the beginner's level. Despite cultivating for such a long time, he still hasn't fully entered the heart's eye realm. This is even with a fixed proficiency from the attribute page. This made him question whether he lacked talent in that aspect or was it because his soul was split, which rendered his spiritual comprehension poor. However, regardless of the reason, nothing could stop him from breaking through the sword skill realm today by forcefully strengthening his attributes. Just as Jack Clark arrived at school, he received a message calling all second layer heaven freshmen for a gathering. In the teaching building conference room, Jack Clark found many familiar faces, which included all of those on the top 50 of the new student ranking, including the first rank holder, Jane Aiken. In the month following the ranking competition, almost all the listed people have made their breakthrough to the second layer heaven. Apart from them, there were also some geniuses who were only a hair's breadth away from the listed people and also managed to break through in the last half of the month, including Justin Wellen and Freya Louise. The conference room was huge, with 70+ students occupying only a small portion of it. Jack Clark took a seat within Class 3's circle. Jack Clark looked at Freya Louise by his side and asked quizzically, "Why have we been called suddenly?" "What happened?" The girl whispered, "It should be related to the Koroya situation." Jack Clark nodded thoughtfully, thinking about the rumors that had been circulating in the school these past few days. Before long, a few teachers walked in. Leading them was a middle-aged man wearing glasses. Following behind him were the head of Class 1, Vernon Leinster, and Lori Parma. After the bespectacled teacher sat down, he cast his gaze around the conference room and nodded satisfactorily, saying, "Very good, so many freshmen have broken through to second layer heaven in the first semester of this year." Then he introduced himself. "Hello everyone, I am Laurent Hawk, the Dean of Martial Height. I've been away from school for a while, so this is my first time meeting everyone. This gathering is related to the situation in Koroya. Currently, the higher-ups have notified all first-rate universities in our country to organize an expedition of new students to gain experience. The minimum requirement is the second layer heaven. After deliberation, our school has decided to respond to this call and organize a batch of new students to participate." Just then, Jane Aiken in the first row raised her hand. Laurent Hawk paused, gave a slight nod to this number one freshman genius since he remembered her. "This classmate, please go ahead if you have any questions." The girl stood up and asked doubtfully, "Teacher, I've also been following the Koroya situation. There are strong men there who can ignore even heavy artillery, high-ranking powerhouses who are at the 7th layer heaven. What role can we, the second layer heaven freshmen, play in the face of such high-level cultivators?" She'd put it subtly, without saying that it was akin to courting death. Addressing this question, Laurent Hawk gave a slight smile. "You don't need to worry about this problem. There are others to deal with those high-ranking powerhouses. Your targets are those ordinary cultists. Although Koroya is currently in chaos, it poses no threat to our vast federation, and powerhouses will shortly step in. Once the rebels and the powerhouses of the evil god sect are suppressed, the remaining work will be carried out jointly by the students from universities and the deployed military. Currently, in the entire Koroya region, the evil god sect has cultivated a lot of low-level cultists. These people are weak and spread doomsday ideologies everywhere. They need to be cleared. Of course, this weakness is from our perspective. Most of these cultists possess the strength of the first and second layer heaven, and if allowed to cause chaos, they will still create some disorder in society. These cultists, who are weak from our perspective, will still create some disorder in society, thus there is a need for a batch of elite support. However, it would be a waste to send senior students there since those are just first and second layer heaven cultists. They have their own matters, and that's why we have considered you. Besides this, there's a probability that you might encounter hidden core members of the evil god sect after they scatter. Therefore, there's a certain danger in this trial, and it isn't compulsory. Everyone will have 3 days to consider, and we expect to set off in a week. Moreover, the target of this trial is not mutant beasts, but those cultists of the evil god sect. Students who choose to participate should be prepared to kill. For now, killing a first layer heaven cultist merits 1 contribution point, a second layer heaven 1 earns 3 points, and a third layer heaven 1 awards 10 points. The higher the rank, the more points you receive. As soon as Laurent Hawk finished, the burly Howard Lee voiced out his doubts. "Teacher, why does it earn only 3 points to kill a second layer heaven cultist? Isn't that a bit low?" Not just him, other interested students also had this confusion. After all, the resources they used to cultivate to the second layer heaven far exceed 10 points. Killing one of those cultists earned only 3 points, isn't that too cheap? However, many didn't care about the fact that this involved killing. Cultivation isn't for fun. Life and death fights are the norm. Laurent Hawk shook his head slightly. For those of you who are second layer cultivators who have gone through orthodox teachings, the cultists of the same level are no match. Their strength comes from the secret skill of the evil god sect, which is feeble and has no supportive skills. Calling them second layer heaven is already complimenting them. Of course, this is under the situation of direct confrontation. Some cultists are cunning and deceitful, their experience in life and death battles are richer than yours. It is best to not underestimate the situation when facing them. Next, Laurent Hawk answered some other students' questions before announcing the end of the meeting. As Class 3 walked out of the conference building, Justin Wellen asked, "Jack, will you participate?" Jack Clark came back to his senses and pointedly asked, "What about you guys?" Freya Louise shook her head slightly, "I'm not sure. Entering the trial as a first-year student and facing a certain level of danger, one need to discuss this with my family." Justin Wellen scratched his head, "One also need to ask at home." Crystal Leinster. "Me too." Matt Watkins gave a small, confident smile, "I'll go. And, I suggest that all those who can should go." Matt's words caused everyone to pause and look at him. Remember, at South Sky Marshall Height, we are among the top 50 talents. But have any of you thought about how many first-class universities there are across the country? When we broaden our gaze to Eastern Summer, or even the entire Federation, how many fresh cultivators can reach the Foundation establishment within a week? Thousands, or tens of thousands. The weight of Matt's words made everyone instinctively feel an oncoming wave of pressure. Yes, at South Sky Marshall Height, there are more than 100 geniuses who can reach Foundation establishment in a week. However, Eastern Summer has dozens of first-class universities, equivalent to thousands of people, at Novelban at. If you also count the new students from the lower-ranked schools, the number skyrockets. This is the number for one semester of this year. As the fundamental cultivation methods are being popularized and resources are favored, the number of cultivators has exploded in recent years. Matt casually remarks, "In South Sky Marshall Height, there is truly only one, or maybe 1.5 geniuses." Although he didn't disclose their names, everyone knew who he was referring to. Jane Aiken and Howard Lee with his innate divine strength. Under such circumstances, if you don't want to remain obscure, you must seize every opportunity to improve, surpass yourself, and surpass everything. After participating in this trial, you can not only get a lot of resources, but also further stimulate your potential under the pressure of life and death battles. By then, you will be able to convert the resources you gain into your cultivation strength. Your rate of improvement will be several times higher than it is now. Once we return from the trials, our strength will be much greater than that of non-participating students. We may even leave them far behind. This is why most cultivators in the second and third grades are not at school. They are all honing their skills outside, pushing their limits to the extreme. Of course, there are risks with rewards, so everyone should consider it carefully. Chapter 56. Intuition of the Mind. Matt Watkins' words shook everyone's hearts. In the past, they had never paid attention to this point, always basking in the glory of being geniuses. But their natural endowments were only average in the entire country, let alone in the larger federation. On the way to the logistics department, Jack Clark also pondered this issue. Should he go, or not go? Under normal conditions, with the synchronous strengthening of a heavy armored beast avatar, he only needed to survive for another year or two. Then his strength would naturally surpass that of his peers with genius talents. Right, it was estimated that he would need to endure for more than a year to surpass a genius like Jane Aiken. After the second evolution, the heavy armored beast's evolution points increased rapidly due to abundant food, but at the same time, more energy was needed for its body to grow. Thus, it would take about 2 months for the beast to reach the requirements for the third evolution, with an increase of 5 points every day. What about the fourth evolution? Half a year. As his physique strengthened, those geniuses also progressed at an alarming rate. After reaching the fourth layer heaven or fifth layer heaven, having pure power and speed might not necessarily make them a match for true martial experts. After all, those who reached the sixth level heaven or above could resist heavy weapons. And after reaching the seventh level heaven, the power of their true strength would be even more terrifying. In this case, his physical body must be strong enough to withstand missiles to be on par with high-ranking powerhouses. But if he chose to take the trial, he would face certain dangers, and at the same time, the rewards would be great. Killing those cultists could earn a lot of contribution points, which could then be exchanged for life crystals. By then, his strength would soar like a rocket. Moreover, his actual combat strength had already reached the third layer heaven, and his survival rate was higher than that of all his classmates. If he was careful, he should be fine. After all, this was a freshman trial, not meant to kill them. The school and the official authorities would do their best to keep the risks within their bearable range. After analyzing the pros and cons of going and not going, Jack Clark temporarily made no decision, planning to wait a few days to see what would happen. Teacher, I want to exchange for 2 level 1 life crystals. Enter your student ID. Verification passed. You have 8 contribution points this month and are eligible for 20% off exchange privileges. Do you confirm that you want to exchange all of them for life crystals? Confirmed. After waiting for a while, Jack Clark walked out of the logistics department with 2 life crystals. On the way, he transformed them into attribute points and was lucky enough to get 9 points. To strengthen the dragon elephant power to the 3rd layer, 20 attribute points are required. Currently, there are not enough attribute points to strengthen. Personal cultivation room. Jack Clark paused upon seeing the words floating in front of him. As expected, it takes more attribute points to break through the 3rd layer of dragon elephant power. He wasn't surprised by this result. After a moment of contemplation, Jack chose to strengthen his sword skill. Consume attribute points to strengthen the mind's eye bright knife. As Jack's voice fell, the 10 attribute points on the page disappeared in an instant. At the same time, a stream of special energy emerged in his mind. Bang! Jack's consciousness roared, his perception spread throughout the entire cultivation room as if it exploded, and he sensed the outside world from another angle as if his soul had left his body. At the same time, information about sword skills crazily poured into his mind, and his body underwent subtle changes. His arms became stronger, his palms rougher as if he had practiced with a sword for several years. A sharp aura gradually emitted from him. After an unknown period of time, Jack opened his eyes with sharp gazes, seeing faint blade lights circulating within them. What a strange feeling from this enhancement. With a thoughtful look, Jack raised his palm like a knife and waved it. Instantly, an invisible sharpness protruded between his fingers, and the air made a faint tearing sound. Unlike breaking through the dragon elephant power, RHE breakthrough in sword skills made Jack feel as if he had forcibly compressed and absorbed the experiences of practicing the sword for several years. Now, he was like an old swordsman who had used a sword for many years. Not only was he instinctively adept with his sword skills, but his body also had memories of practice. The biggest harvest from this breakthrough was that he had completely entered the realms of heart's eye perception. Even if he closed his eyes at this moment when he was in the personal cultivation room, he could still sense the situation inside and even outside. This perception was not from released spirit power but a mysterious induction similar to the sixth sense, where one seemingly gained an extra pair of heart's eye to perceive danger and killing intent. After quietly feeling the changes brought about by this breakthrough, Jack Clark called up his attribute page with a thought. In the following days, Jack focused on the international situation. Right after the Federation conference passed the motion, a group of Federation cultivators brazenly parachuted in and carried out beheading operations against RHE rebels and evil god sect in RHE major cities of Koroya. This surprise attack killed most of the high-level strongmen of the rebels and evil god sect on the spot. Meanwhile, during the beheading operation, elite Federation troops also entered the major cities of Koroya on a large scale via airdrop. With the help of the Air Force and Navy's firepower, a total of tens of thousands of fighter and bomber runs were carried out in just 2 days, taking control of all the main cities. In addition, the already gathered army and armored troops through sea and air transport around Koroya launched an attack at the same time, encircling and annihilating the remaining rebels. Facing such overwhelming power, the entire Koroya territory was captured in just 3 days. At Atop. Obviously, before the Federal Assembly was convened, the Federation had already begun assembling troops in preparation for suppressing the insurgents, and the conference was merely a formality. Hence, the danger of this trial might be even lower than anticipated. At the same time, this battle also indirectly displayed the terrifying power of the Human Federation, crushing the power of a small allied nation as effortlessly as swatting a fly. Mom, The school is organizing an outing for trials, and I might have to go on a long trip next week, Jack said to Doris Raven during dinner. After breaking through to the hard SI realm and possessing a wide range of keen intuition for perceiving danger, he finally decided to participate in the trial after weighing the pros and cons. As a cultivator, if he didn't have RHE courage to participate in such a low-level trial under the protection of the school and the Federation, how could he even face the ferocious mutated beasts? And although he could choose not to participate this time, RHE mutated beast trial, a must for sophomores, would come next. His character was steady and low-key, not timid. When other second-layer Heaven classmates dared to participate in the trials, he, whose strength was comparable to third-layer Heaven, felt embarrassed for being too cautious. Everyone was in the same boat, so there was nothing to be afraid of. Of course, what made him determined was the power displayed by the Federation, which quelled the entire Koroya territory in just 3 days and killed most of the high-ranking insurgents and evil god sect experts. The remaining ones were chased by the Federation's powerhouses, with no way to escape to the heavens or the earth. Doris Raven was startled and then asked with concern, "Trials? Is it dangerous? How long will it take?" Jack shook his head. "There's no real danger. We're just freshmen, and the difficulty of RHE trials arranged by the school won't be too high, unlike the mutated beast trials we face as sophomores. However, the place we're going to this time is quite far, and it might take a month or two." Doris nodded. "As long as there's no danger, but it's going to take quite a while." Looking at the sunny youth in front of her, Doris suddenly realized that since high school, her son's changes had been getting bigger, and now he was going to go out on his own. This was his first time being away from home for so long. "Bro, is everyone in your grade going to this trial?" Glenn Clark asked curiously. Jack shook his head. "Only the top 100 in the grade qualify." "Oh, by the way, the school held a freshman ranking competition before, and I ranked 49th. Saying this, Jack remembered that he hadn't mentioned this to his family before. "Bro, you're amazing," Glenn exclaimed in excitement and admiration. "One heard that this term of South Sky Martial Height has many geniuses, and you still managed to make it to the top 49. You're truly my brother." How did you know that this term at South Sky Martial Height had so many geniuses?" Jack asked, somewhat puzzled. My classmate told me. He also said that there's a girl named Jane Aiken in your school who's dominating the whole grade and is just amazing." Jack was speechless. Where did you pick up these adjectives? Glenn's excitement aside, Doris Raven's eyes grew warmer and prouder when she learned of her son's excellent performance in school. Chapter 57. Darren Callum, Battle Armor. After dinner, leaving Glenn Clark to do the chores like washing the dishes, Jack Clark went upstairs to cultivate. He practiced dragon elephant power as usual, then sank his consciousness and focused on his avatar. In the pitch-black cave, the ferocious black unique beast opened its eyes and started moving its increasingly heavy body, leaving deep claw marks with every step. Soon, the cave entrance underwater wavered as a dark shadow vaguely appeared in the river. At At. Bang! Under the deep water, water splashed as the heavy armored beast tightly bit the neck of a mutated fish 4 meters long, its body covered in thick scales, and its dorsal fin like a spiky forest. No matter how fiercely the mutated fish struggled, it could not escape the heavy armored beast's mouth, being held down firmly at the riverbed with its astonishing power. Although the heavy armored beast was half the size of that mutated fish, its weight far exceeded the mutated fish. With the talent to unleash a 100-fold power, it completely crushed the fish in all aspects. Finally, with a click, the mutated fish's spine was bitten off, and the strong smell of blood spread along the river, making the black unique beast appear even more ferocious. As the heavy armored beast began to tear the fish meat and eat, Jack Clark was slightly distracted, weighing which genes to fuse in the heavy armored beast next time. An electric eel that could generate its electricity or focus on enhancing agility and speed. As Jack considered, he gradually leaned towards prioritizing speed. At the moment, the heavy armored beast already possessed the talents of defense and strength, almost instantly killing all mutated creatures of the same size. However, as its body grew larger, it exposed some weaknesses. For example, its increasingly heavy body is affected by external gravity, making it slower and slower. This was not a problem in the water, its speed was only slightly worse than that of the fishes. But on land, its deep footprints slowed it down further. November 5th, in the morning. "Teacher, I'd like to sign up for the trial." Upon arriving at the school, Jack Clark immediately signed up with Lori Parma. Seeing the youth standing before him, Laurie Parma had a deep impression of him because Jack Clark was the only freshman who broke into the top 50 of the grade with low-level martial arts. Moreover, more than half a month after the ranking competition, he had already broken through the second layer heaven. This scenario could only indicate that his true martial arts talent far surpassed many so-called geniuses. Unfortunately, the rule determining the access privileges based on initial cultivation talent came from higher-ups. Otherwise, with Jack Clark's talent and the cultivation of advanced skill, his strength would have been even stronger. In a reflective mood, Laurie Parma spoke solemnly, "Are you sure you want to participate in the trial?" Jack nodded. "Yes. All right. Sign this agreement. It contains information about the risks of this trial, precautions, and some benefits offered by the school," said Laurie Parma, handing Jack Clark a document. Jack took the document, sat down, and began to read it carefully. The first page detailed the possible risks they might encounter, such as handguns, submachine guns, grenades, bombs, and even covert sniper attacks. Apart from the risk information, there was also a waiver for weapons and legal restrictions. All students participating in the trial could carry weapons, and officials would give a set of special full-body armor. This equipment was similar to bulletproof vests, covering the entire body, with the inner layer made of special steel mixed with a flexible material and lightweight alloy on the outer layer to create a thin battle armor. The weakest parts of the armor, like the joints, could block handgun bullets, while the front could resist rifle bullets. It is also resistant to puncturing. Even if the bullet penetrated the surface alloy, it would be stopped by the flexible steel wires on the inner layer, penetrating at most into the muscles without causing piercing damage. The strongest part of this armor was its helmet. Made of a thicker alloy, the helmet could withstand even sniper bullets, but couldn't resist armor-piercing bullets. Thus, it was only suitable for facing light firepower. One should still avoid heavy firepower like rockets and anti-equipment sniper rifles. While the entire armor weighed about 30 kilograms, it was made specifically for cultivators, as ordinary people would have difficulty moving in it. As for the lifting of legal restrictions on killing, as long as it involved rebels or cultists wielding weapons posing a threat, it was permissible to kill on the spot. Simply put, it was a license for violence. Seeing this, even Jack Clark couldn't help but be taken aback. With the speed, power, and explosion of a second-layer cultivator, combined with the full-body armor that ignores ordinary firearms, a charge into the ranks of ordinary rebels would be overwhelming. However, those who kill will eventually be killed. The contract also included a life and death statement, stating that if a participating student died in battle, the school would provide some compensation but not assume responsibility. After carefully reading all the terms, Jack Clark signed his name. Laurie Parma took the signed contract and reminded, "Cultivate well in the meantime. We'll gather at the school on Sunday morning, and a special plane will take us to Koroya." Are you going too, teacher?" Laurie nodded. "Yes, I am one of the teachers leading the team this time, and I will be responsible for dealing with the possible experts from the other side." Hearing this, Jack hesitated for a moment, but couldn't help but ask curiously, "Teacher, can I ask how many realms you have reached?" "Why, are you curious?" "A little." Laurie smiled. "I don't mind telling you. My realm is at the peak of 6th level heaven, but I've been stuck there for years." "You haven't broken through for years." Jack was stunned. Laurie snorted. "Do you think breaking through realms is as simple as drinking water? You should know that many people are stuck in the 4th layer heaven or 5th layer heaven for their entire lives." Speaking of this, Laurie got emotional. "Your generation is lucky. So many of you have broken through to 2nd layer heaven in senior 1. If it was more than 10 years ago, even in their 20s, those who could break through to the 2nd layer heaven were considered geniuses." Jack was taken aback. "That's extreme." Laurie speechless. Of course, back then there was no foundation establishment method, schools didn't have a lot of resources, and there weren't even a tenth of the people who could directly cultivate true martial and enter the door. Moreover, even if they successfully entered, their progress was extremely slow. Those who broke through one realm per year were super geniuses, while it was normal to break through to the 2nd layer heaven after 2 or 3 years of cultivation. Back in the day, after Jack opened the floodgates, Laurie got more animated and shared with him the cultivation situation in the past decades. Not only did Jack not find these stories boring, he was even more interested in them, and learned a lot of new information he hadn't known before. In addition to breaking through to the 3rd realm and other cultivation experiences. Among the nearly 80 genius 2nd layer heaven students of the whole school, Jack included, some chose to sign up, but there were also those who chose to give up. Not everyone has the courage to face the massacre directly. After all, they are still in Senior 1 and are just teenagers. In the end, only around 50 of those 80 decided to participate. In the afternoon, Jack arrived at Crystal and their club's activity room. In the rest area, Crystal, Justin, Freya, Matt, Mandy, and Maria were chatting. When Jack arrived, they greeted each other one by one. Compared to Class 3, Class 9 has only had 2 people break through to second layer heaven so far. As the initiator of this gathering, Matt said, "Just yesterday, the Federation announced the suppression of the Koroya rebels and the beginning of economic and civilian recovery." Crystal nodded. In contrast to the vast human Federation, the strength of the Koroya rebels is nothing. If it weren't for the rules set when the Human Alliance was established, the Federation would have quelled the rebellion long ago. Matt cautiously said, "But we cannot take this lightly. It's chaotic out there, so one suggests we form a small team. That way, in battle, we have people watching our backs and helping each other, avoiding sneak attacks. What do you think?" "Sounds good. I agree to it." Jack didn't object either. After all, having a little more security was better with these familiar faces than with other students. So, everyone joined a chat group called South Sky 39 to stay connected. As soon as Jack entered the group, he recognized everyone by their avatars, but his eyes became strange when he saw their usernames. Crystal's username was Queen, which suited her personality. The seemingly gentle Mandy's username was Gentle Sea Breeze, which was quite girlish. Freya's was Dream Catching Clear Song, which matched her temperament. But what kind of ghost was Justin's? Super Chirpy Bully. And Matt, who seemed calm and wise, had a username of If Youth Isn't Wild We Are in Vain. Chapter 58. Early Preparations. After leaving the activity room, Jack Clark went to the cultivation classroom to practice sword skill and dragon elephant power, and only finished after the school bell rang past 4 o'clock. Today he didn't go to the reading room to read, he left the school early instead. Walking out of the school gate, Jack Clark took a taxi to the flower, bird, fish, and insect market. It was still the same pet store with birds and insects. As he walked in, Jack Clark said familiarly, "Boss Lee, where are the insects I ordered?" Seeing it was a familiar customer, the boss showed a smile. "Here, one put them in a box. I packed you a few more, just in case they die on the way." With that, Boss Lee led Jack Clark to a shelf inside, and there was a small box about 20 centimeters long and wide with some rotten leaves for bedding. On these leaves, 4 insect-like creatures of about 3 centimeters long were crawling around. Their body surfaces were narrow and gleaming with a metallic luster. The most unique feature of these insects was their bulging compound eyes and the unusually long legs. These insects are quite common, but they're a bit tricky to catch. The creatures in the wild are getting more and more aggressive, and many of them have started to show some minor mutations. Since we're all familiar here, you can have them for just 400 this time. Okay. Thank you, Boss Lee. Jack Clark didn't haggle and directly transferred him $400, took the box and a box of mealworms that Boss Lee gave as food, and left the pet store. This was what Jack Clark had prepared for the heavy armored beast's next evolution. It was an insect named tiger beetle, which fed on meat. The most famous feature of these insects was their speed, regarded as the fastest in the insect world. They could move a distance of up to 300 times their body length in an instant. Once Jack Clark determined that the next target of the avatar evolution was to enhance speed, he checked many related resources and finally decided on the tiger beetle. By then, after absorbing the genes of tiger beetle, even if they just get a tenfold increase in their body length's movement speed, it would be a significant boost for the heavy armored beast. Added Nobleman at. In fact, for the third avatar evolution, Jack Clark did consider mutated beasts. However, ordinary mutated beasts had only greater strength and stronger defense than the heavy armored beast of the same size. As for those powerful mutated beasts with unique abilities, it was not something he could afford or kill at this point. Besides that, Jack Clark also considered some special creatures, like the tardigrade. These creatures, which are said to be the undeath, have a frightening level of vitality and can survive in extremely high and low temperatures, adapting to various environments. They could even survive in outer space through special abilities. However, after carefully reviewing the information on these creatures, Jack Clark gave up. Because the so-called tenacity of life claimed to be able to survive hundreds of years in a dehydrated dormant state to escape from the environment. During this state, similar to suspended animation, they can do nothing. They would be helplessly awaiting death if they encountered an enemy at that time. In reality, their active life cycle was only a few weeks long, and the undeath claim was overly exaggerated. Bro, why did you come back so early today? It was past 5 o'clock. Glenn Clark, who had returned from school, was surprised to see that his brother was already home. Yeah, I had something to do, so I left early. Jack Clark then called Glenn over, pointed to the box on the table, and said, Glenn, after I go for the trials later on, remember to help me feed these. Glenn looked at the tiger beetle on the table with curiosity and asked, Bro, what kind of bugs are these? Jack Clark casually found a reason. Tiger beetle. It's my new pet. Just drop a few mealworms in there each day. No problem, bro. According to the current growth rate of the heavy armored beast, it is expected to reach the third evolution by the end of the month, and by then, Jack might still be in Koroya. So Jack decided to have Glenn take care of feeding the tiger beetle. When the avatar was about to evolve, he would call Glenn and have him go out at night to throw the box containing the tiger beetle into the river. As for the reason, any excuse would do. After arranging everything, Glenn volunteered to cook, and he was becoming more and more diligent lately. Seeing this, Jack went upstairs with the tiger beetle to cultivate. In reality, he leaned back in the chair and his consciousness sank. Suddenly, under the muddy sand of the surging river, a black, lizard-like head emerged, looking fierce against the backdrop of 3 pairs of red feather horns. The mud churned as a heavy armored beast, like a crocodile, swam out from the riverbed. During this time, Jack had been controlling the heavy armored beast to continue eating almost around the clock, as long as he felt it had digested enough. However, this area was the estuary, with deep and wide rivers, and there were also some ferocious fish that could adapt to fresh water, like the scaly mutated shark and the horned tiger whale. Facing these large mutated fish over 8 meters long, the heavy armored beast would either turn away or sink into the mud. Without a clear understanding of the strength of these massive mutated fish, there was no need to fight them. Getting injured would be a loss, slowing down the evolution and growth. Under 30 meters of river water, the water was muddy, and the heavy armored beast could only see vaguely within a range of 10 meters or so. Just as the heavy armored beast was swimming around, a shadow over 3 meters long entered its field of vision in the distance, and the heavy armored beast's eyes lit up. In comparison to humans, the strength of the mutated beasts in the water was easier to judge. Generally, the larger the body, the stronger they were, but there were some exceptions. For instance, the heavy armored beast had encountered a 2-meter-long mutated fish that looked like a sharp sword, with a terrifying speed. At that time, it only took an instant to shoot by and tear a mutated fish over 3 meters long in half, before facing the heavy armored beast and being eaten together. However, the heavy armored beast also paid a price, as it suffered a wound on its abdomen that was half a meter long and a few millimeters deep, caused by the sword-shaped mutated fish. This was the first time the heavy armored beast had been injured since its evolution. Although only a small part of the exoskeleton armor on its belly had been cut open, it still had a scare. After all, the exoskeleton armor on its abdomen was only 2 centimeters thick, and if the mutated fish were 10 times stronger, it would pose a threat to the heavy armored beast. Since that day, Jack had become much more cautious. At this moment, the mutated fish also spotted the heavy armored beast. Due to the difference in size, it didn't run away but instead approached it. It was a small mutated shark covered in gray scales, with sharp teeth in its mouth. Upon seeing the fierce appearance and the sturdy, sharp limbs of the heavy armored beast, the mutated shark didn't attack immediately but swam cautiously around it. Seeing this, the heavy armored beast pretended to be clumsy, slowly turning around in place, retracting its limbs on both sides of its body, showing a timid and defensive posture. Soon, after circling the heavy armored beast a few times and not sensing any danger, the mutated shark swung its tail and launched a fierce attack from behind. In the blink of an eye, it reached the back of the heavy armored beast, its sharp mouth wide open, biting down hard on the back of its head. At this moment, the seemingly clumsy heavy armored beast suddenly sank and appeared below the mutated shark, grabbing its body with its claws. Rip. The heavy armored beast's claws tore through the mutated shark's scales, and with a powerful bite, it tore a huge bloody hole in its belly. Blood gushed out instantly, staining the surrounding river water red. When facing the 4-limbed heavy armored beast, these mutated fish had no chance of escaping once caught, and in just a few bites, the heavy armored beast ripped apart their stomachs and killed them. In the blood-red seawater, the black unique beast began to devour its prey, each bite tearing off chunks of fish meat, looking increasingly fierce. Chapter 59. 100 boats vying to stream. It was Sunday, and Jack Clark was still in his usual outfit of a white t-shirt, black casual pants, and flat shoes, carrying a backpack with 2 sets of clothes in his hand. Doris Raven and Glenn Clark saw him off at the entrance to the courtyard. Doris voiced her concerns. "Jack, you need to be careful this time. I've heard that things are pretty chaotic in Koroya. People die there every day." After learning that Jack was going on this trial with his teacher, Doris had become particularly attentive to the matter, so she had done some additional research and knew that the trial site would be in Koroya. In contrast to Doris's concern, Glenn was merely curious and excited. Jack responded with a small smile. "Mom, don't worry. The situation there is now controlled by the Federation, and we students are just going to observe. Even if a few powerful experts slip through the net, the stronger adults like our teachers will block them. At most, a few fledglings will get through to give us some combat experience." After comforting Doris, Jack waved goodbye, slung his backpack over his shoulder, and headed toward the school. When Jack arrived at the school gate at 9 in the morning, there were already 2 buses waiting, filled with students who had chosen to take part in the trial. Upon seeing Jack, Justin Wellen excitedly waved at him. "Jack, over here." This time, Jack wasn't the last to show up. Crystal Leinster, Freya Louise, and some others hadn't arrived yet. The 2 boys stood at the edge of the crowd. Jack looked at the excited Justin and curiously asked, "Mr. Willard, why are you participating in this trial? You don't really need to, do you?" For most students, the trial was a chance to earn contribution points. Gaining combat experience was only secondary. After all, they'd have plenty of opportunities to sharpen their combat skills in the future when they're more advanced in their cultivation. Therefore, someone like Justin, who was rich and even had people to provide him with high-level resources, really had no need to take risks. He could just continue cultivating in peace, wait until next year to break through the triplex, then join the trial when his strength was greater, which would be much safer. Justin huffed with some indignation. "Jack, are you looking down on me, Justin Wellen? If you dare to go, why wouldn't I?" Jack gave him a sidelong glance. "It's not like you're stronger than me or anything." Justin chuckled and pretended not to hear his comment. "No real reason, actually. One just want to go and see what it's like. My dad and my older brother both support me on this. According to my brother, cultivating requires unyielding determination. If I can't even dare to participate in a trial supervised by the school, how could one dare to face those terrifying giant beasts in the future? Where would I get the courage to comprehend the great terror between life and death? As long as my family doesn't object, I, the mighty Justin Wellen, will certainly not be afraid. And, one have brought some good stuff with me this time. My cultivation will certainly soar. By then, none of the likes of Jane Aiken and the class leader will be a match for me, ha ha ha." His excitement grew as he spoke, and in the end, Justin even burst into laughter, as if he had already seen himself rising up during the trial and overpowering all the geniuses of his age. Ahem. While Justin was immersed in his fantasy, Jack cleared his throat and looked at him with an odd expression. "Mr. Willard, I think you should take a look behind you before you laugh." Justin's laughter froze on his face, and a sense of foreboding rose in his heart. "No way, it can't be this unlucky." The class leader heard him again, right? With this thought, Justin slowly turned his head, only to see Crystal quietly standing behind him, with a pink lady's backpack on her back. Additionally, Matt Watkins, Freya, Mandy, and Maria were also there, the 3 girls stifling their laughter. Ha, ha ha ha. "Good morning, everyone." Justin gave a chuckle, his smile perfectly natural, without a hint of embarrassment. The others, already accustomed to Justin's habit of boasting, just glanced at him indifferently. After everyone else had gathered, Vernon Leinster, Lori Parma, and some other teachers also arrived. This time, 57 students from South Sky Marshall Height were participating in the trial. After confirming that everyone had arrived, the students and teachers all boarded the 2 buses. 2 hours later, they arrived at a suburban airport, and after going through some check-in procedures at the airport, the bus directly took Jack and the others to the runway. On the side of the runway, 2 sci-fi-style large airliners quietly stood. But calling them airliners wouldn't be as accurate as calling them fighting passenger planes. Under the airplane, 2 large-caliber machine guns were installed on the left and right. In the middle was a special weapon similar to a railgun with a barrel about 30 centimeters thick. In addition to these, there were short-range air missiles and other airborne weapons suspended under the wings, and even a bomb release port at the belly of the plane. At Nobleman at. There was no other way. With the continuous emergence of mutated beasts, many birds had also mutated, especially some large eagles. Over the years, whenever satellites detected threatening powerful mutated birds, the authorities would send out cultivators and fighters to exterminate them, not giving them a chance to grow. If they allowed these mutated birds to continue to breed and grow, humans would slowly lose their air superiority. However, this extermination operation only targeted large or powerful mutated birds. Those with some signs of mutation but with average strength were ignored. There was no helping it, there were too many to kill. Therefore, these weapons were used to guard against those ordinary mutated birds, preventing them from causing air accidents. After everyone got off the bus, Vernon, holding a name list, said gravely, "Your weapons and the battle armor given to you are in the belly of the plane. Remember to claim them after getting off the plane. Also, there are 2 trial locations this time, Caleb Tool City and Leicester City in Koroya. Now, I will start calling names. Those who are called will board Flight 075, which one will lead to Caleb Tool City?" Jane Aiken. Present. Crystal Leinster. Here. Those whose names were called walked up into the airplane with their bags. After more than 20 names were called, Jack was shocked to find that except for him and Justin, everyone else from Class 9 and Class 3 had boarded Flight 075. Unexpectedly, this ad hoc team hadn't even started and was already disbanded. Jack shook his head, swung his backpack over his shoulder, and followed Lori Parma and the other 3 teachers onto Flight 076. Due to the modifications, a part of the large airplane was occupied by weapons and ammunition and could barely seat about 30 people, including Jack. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am the flight attendant for this flight, which is expected to last 11 hours. If you need anything during the flight, please feel free to find me. Please fasten your seatbelts now and carefully read the flight manual placed on your seat. It details what to do in case of an attack by a mutated beast during the flight." Buzz. Accompanied by the roar of the engines, the 2 airplanes began to taxi one after the other during the flight attendant's explanation, spreading their wings towards the heights of the clouds. Moreover, 1 or 2 fighting passenger planes took off from every city in eastern summer that had first-class universities and headed in the same direction. Seen from space, it gave a sense of 100 boats racing, giving a sense of vigor and vitality. Chapter 60. Energy Cannon. When the airplane finished its climb, the excitement of Justin Wellen from the adjacent seat was hard to suppress as he looked at the boundless sea of clouds outside with gleaming eyes. Suddenly he said, "Jack, do you think we might be attacked by missiles or something before the plane lands? Could you say something more pleasant?" Jack Clark was speechless. Novice cultivators like them would be helpless if they encountered an airborne missile attack. Even parachuting in low altitude wouldn't guarantee a safe landing. "Hee. I'm just nervous." Justin Wellen let out a shy laugh. Jack gave him a side glance. "First time on a plane, huh? You make it sound as if you've been on a lot of flights before." Justin Wellen rolled his eyes. "Now is not the same as 50 years ago. Flying has become a dangerous mode of travel. No one would choose to fly unless necessary. All right, the flight is going to take a while. I'm going to get some sleep." Jack Clark grinned. Of course, he didn't mention how he had once gotten sick on planes. Jack closed his eyes, seemingly asleep, but in fact, his consciousness sank and he turned into a heavy armored beast, beginning his hunt of the day. The growth of the heavy armored beast literally depends on a lot of eating. As in the early days, the essence derived from the food turned into evolution values feeding its growth. Therefore, during this period, the heavy armored beast spends its time eating or traveling to eat, almost never returning to its lair during daylight, and only hiding in the muddy riverbed after eating its fill. Similarly, under this circumstance, Jack was busy yet fulfilled, spending half of his daily energy here. The majority of the long flight, barring meal times, Jack appeared to be sleeping, making Justin Wellen quite envious. He too wanted to be this calm. Boom, boom. Jack was startled awake by a sudden roar. No sooner had he opened his eyes, he noticed some panic inside the cabin. At the cabin door, flight attendants were hurriedly calling out, "Everyone stay calm. Don't panic, we have only encountered a group of normal mutated birds. Quiet." Just then, a low roar that echoed throughout the cabin managed to calm the shaken students. Standing at the cabin door, Lori Parma from first class solemnly told them, "As cultivators, you must stay calm while disasters befall, and remain keen to your surroundings. What does it tell if you lose your composure without even knowing what's going on?" Bang, bang. As Lori was lecturing them, Jack saw missiles hung under the wings of the plane being blasted off and machine guns underneath the cabin roaring continuously, the recoil making the plane shake slightly. At nobleman at. Boom. At that moment, a violent vibration erupted abruptly. Even Lori couldn't help but frown. They even had to use the energy cannon. Fortunately, a few minutes later the roaring machine guns gradually ceased and all the students received the news that the group of mutated birds had been completely wiped out. That was thrilling. Justin Wellen trembled with excitement. Jack shook his head. Sure, it's thrilling, but it's really irritating to have no control over my own safety. Over the following hour, they encountered several more attacks from ordinary mutated birds. It seemed that there were many mutated animals in the area through which the plane was flying. After passing through that area, there was no more trouble, and after 3 more hours of flight, they arrived at their destination above Leicester City. They had set off a little after 10 in the morning, and due to the time difference, it was evening when they arrived in Leicester, where the temperature was slightly lower than in Mist River. Looking down from the airplane, they could see the city below was full of scars, many places had turned into ruins, buildings had collapsed, and roads had been damaged. As the plane landed on the runway, everyone breathed a sigh of relief and began to exit the plane one by one. This was a somewhat rundown airport, not very large, the distant tower building gave off a worn feel of several decades past. By the runway, a band of soldiers attired in black combat uniforms were already waiting. Lori Parma and his 2 other teacher colleagues went to them. Parma, dressed in a second lieutenant's uniform, spoke quietly with one of the sergeants while Jack Clark and his student peers waited at some distance. The idle Jack Clark swept his gaze over the desolate airport, then let it fall on the submachine guns and rifles in the hands of these soldiers. These guns were a bit different from the regular firearms, bigger caliber, longer body, and the entire gun coated in a metallic sheen. It was apparent at a glance that it was quite heavy, with immense destructive power. Besides that, Jack Clark could also detect from these soldiers the vibe of the first layer heaven cultivators. However, unlike them, the students, the soldiers, Chi blood feel was more steady, profound, their 10-odd men blending together as if a single individual, not as lively as them. At this moment, Lori Parma walked over to them and spoke solemnly, "Everyone line up, collect your weapons and battle armor, then go to the room over there and put on your gear." Yes. Jack Clark's gaze turned intense. They actually had to put on their battle armor right after getting off the plane. Could it be that the situation here was more severe than he had anticipated? Queuing up, Jack Clark quickly received his long knife and a suitcase. In the boys' room near the airport, Jack Clark opened the suitcase. A black-red folded armor suddenly appeared before his eyes. Following the instructions, Jack Clark started to put on the special steel wire-made pants and fixed the thin but firm alloy around his thighs, kneecaps, and calves. Then came the chest armor. Besides the joints, light alloy covered his front chest, back, shoulders, and arms as well. Lastly, specialty gloves and metal battle boots. The last piece was a science fiction-like helmet, fully made of reinforced alloy, still black and red with ballistic glasses around the eye area. As soon as the students put on this gear, their disposition greatly changed, carried a solemn air about them, like some super soldiers from the future. Justin Wellen, holding his helmet, came over beside Jack Clark and started showing off. "Jack, don't I look cool?" Jack Clark nodded. "Not bad, looking somewhat human." "What do you mean by somewhat human? This is total awe-inspiring dominance." Justin Wellen was not convinced. Standing 1.85 meters tall, Justin Wellen wearing the full set of armor looked broad and wide. If he puts on the helmet, there would be no sign of him being a 16-year-old adolescent. Jack Clark was likewise. His physique improved continuously along with the cultivation, diet, and nutrition during the past 2 months. His height had already reached 1.82 meters. However, compared to the tougher Justin Wellen, Jack Clark was just a touch more evenly built, upright in tail, a perfect golden inverted triangle. At this time, after putting on the black and red armor, he looked gallant and handsome. Stepping out made the few fellow female students' eyes lit up. Noticing the gaze of those female students, Justin Wellen showed a mournful expression. "Jack, I have a feeling I will need to keep my distance from you whenever we go out." "Why is that?" Jack Clark, with the long knife at his back, was puzzled. "There's no why, it's a man's choice." Jack Clark was speechless. What kind of gibberish is that? With that, he glanced at his classmates. Each of them had got weapons like a long sword, pole, etc. strapped on their backs. There were some special weapons as well. For instance, the spiked shield on Justin Wellen's back that's wider and taller than a person. Howard Lee had a pillar. strapped on his back that's as thick as a thigh and 3 meters long. Lori Parma looked at the fully equipped group, speaking solemnly. The Federation's earlier attack has completely destroyed the road between this airport and Leicester City. It still hasn't been repaired. We're the first batch of freshmen from the martial arts school sent for aid. Now we have to travel more than 10 kilometers on foot crossing the destroyed section of the road. There's a troop transport vehicle waiting on the other side. At present, the situation in Leicester City has not completely stabilized. The federal forces only control the urban region. There are still small bands of rebels resisting in other areas. Therefore, we might encounter attacks later. It's best if everyone puts on their helmets to avoid any accidents. Understood? Understood. Chapter 61. Furious Slaughter. Following the guidance of the 10-man squad, Jack Clark and the others left the airport. They had only walked 4 kilometers along the road when the roadside became pockmarked and rough, showing signs of bombardments by heavy artillery and missiles. The ferocity of the Federation's military offensive a few days ago was evident. Crossing a section of the broken road several kilometers long, a group of low-lying buildings appeared in front of everyone, which should have been a small town. But the small town was now in ruins, with large pits and bullet holes from explosions everywhere, as well as traces of fire. The squad leader leading the way said solemnly, "Be careful, everyone. This small town was once occupied by a rebel force of 1,000 men and was later defeated by our army. But most of these rebels are locals and very familiar with the terrain. During our patrols these days, we often see." Before the squad leader could finish speaking, Jack felt a strong sense of danger coming. 100 meters away in the small town, a dark-skinned middle-aged man stood up on a flat-roofed house, carrying a shoulder-mounted rocket launcher. In an instant, the sharp whistling sound rang out as a rocket, trailing a fiery tail, soared toward everyone. Looking for death. The female teacher in front uttered a low growl, and a terrible aura burst forth from her body. The powerful blue true power, like a flame, enveloped her entire body. Boom. The ground exploded, and the female teacher transformed into a blur, instantly appearing dozens of meters away and slapped the rocket. Bang! The explosion from the rocket sent a ball of fire and smoke far into the distance. In the midst of the flames and smoke, the female teacher's blue true power, like a flame, flickered around her, leaving her unharmed and exuding an astonishing oppressive aura. At this moment, over 100 figures emerged from the ruined buildings in the small town more than 100 meters away. Most of them held rifles, submachine guns, and even heavy machine guns. One person wielded a grenade launcher. Apart from that, 10 black-robed evil god sect cultists appeared, shouting, "Open fire, and kill all the federal geniuses." Lori Parma also shouted, "Soldiers take cover on the spot, leave the cultists to us, all students join forces to kill all the rebels." As Lori Parma spoke, gunfire erupted from afar, with countless bullets flying towards everyone. The first to be hit was the teacher who stopped the rocket, engulfed by the numerous bullets, causing her blue true power, like a flame, to constantly tremble from the impact. Kill. Lori Parma and another middle-aged teacher unleashed their terrifying auras, their external red and white true power danced like flames, and in an instant, they vanished on the spot, leaving behind a trail of afterimages as they disappeared. Boom. Boom. Midway, the two of them directly intercepted and destroyed 2 rockets aimed at them in midair. The overbearing display caused the attackers' faces to change dramatically. A few ordinary rebels even trembled with fear, wanting to flee. The leading evil god sect cultist's face darkened. What's going on? The information stated that there was only one advanced cultivator. Don't be afraid, continue shooting to deplete their true power. They won't last long. Sweep them with heavy machine guns. After speaking, he gestured for the others to retreat. They may be fanatical evil god sect cultists, but they were no fools. Boom. The wall collapsed. The female teacher blinked and passed through the barrage of bullets, crumbling the wall, blocking her path with a palm strike. She leapt high into the air towards an evil god sect cultist. However, the cultists were not weak either. The 2 strongest among them were only slightly weaker than Lori Parma. Seeing that they couldn't retreat in time, the cultists' blood-colored strength erupted as they tried to gang up on the female teacher first. At the same time, Lori Parma and the other teacher also charged into the small town with white waves, with a terrifying speed of more than 100 meters per second, lunging towards the other cultists. Compared to the 2 leaders, these cultists were considerably weaker. Some of them were even only at the second layer, and one was instantly killed by Lori Parma's palm strike upon contact. An intense battle erupted instantly, walls collapsing and houses exploding as they disappeared into the outskirts of the small town. Seeing this scene, Justin Wellen licked his lips, carrying the spiked shield in front of him, and excitedly said, "Jack, let's go too." Jack, wearing a helmet, nodded slightly and reminded, "Watch out for the grenades." With the full body armor protection, the ordinary rifles and submachine guns wouldn't pose a fatal threat, and the impact of the bullets could be ignored. However, grenades and rockets were still extremely lethal to them. Kill. As soon as Jack finished speaking, Howard Lee, wearing black-red armor and carrying an iron column, charged forward like a furious tank. Although he appeared reckless in his charge, his path zigzagged, evading most of the bullets, with the armor blocking the few that hit him. In addition, more than 10 excited freshmen out of the remaining 20 joined in the charge, also using obstacles to dodge bullets and relying on their armor defense when they couldn't avoid. Seeing this, Jack did not hesitate, drew his long knife, and swiftly moved like a gust of wind, ghost-like as he circled from the side. In the second layer Heaven's cultivation, these students' speed far exceeded ordinary people with over 5 times the physique of ordinary people. Even wearing battle armor and heavy weapons, the slowest one's explosive power was close to 20 meters per second, and it only took a few seconds to cover 100 meters. Jack Clark's speed was even faster, almost over 50 meters per second, and in a blink of an eye, he charged into the small town from the side. Bang! Jack Clark stepped on the red brick wall, and the powerful force created cracks on the wall. He then leapt into the air, directly jumping onto the 4 meters high flat roof. There, 3 dark-skinned, fierce-looking rebels were squatting on the edge, firing wildly at the incoming freshman students. As rebels who had experienced several months of chaos, these men reacted very quickly. When Jack jumped up, their faces changed drastically and they decisively fired their guns. Bang, bang, bang. Numerous bullets landed on the roof, stirring up smoke and dust, but they all missed their target. At the moment when they pulled the trigger, Jack had already disappeared from the spot with even greater speed, his figure suddenly appearing 2 meters to their left. Without hesitation, a 2-meter-long straight blade tore through the air, like a flash of white light passing through the 3 men in an instant. Pooh! 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 Under the unparalleled sharpness of the blade, the 3 men were instantly killed. Even the rifles in their hands were cut in half and fell to the ground, hot blood gushing out. Although it was his first time killing, Jack's eyes were cold, and he showed no emotion at the sight of the severed limbs and broken bodies on the ground. At nobleman at. For him, such bloody scenes were already common. After all, he had swallowed hundreds of mutated fish, let alone killing human beings. However, just at this moment, bang, bang, bang. A string of bullets passed through where Jack had just stood, and sparks and smoke erupted on the rooftop. Behind a 2-story small building, a rebel hid behind the stairwell. As soon as he saw Jack kill his 3 companions, he decisively fired at Jack. But at the moment he fired his gun, Jack, feeling the dangerous aura, had already moved aside. This was the terrifying power of the second layer Heart's Eye realm, which allowed a keen perception of danger and the line of sight filled with murderous intent. Boom. Wearing battle armor, Jack was like a raging mammoth. After dodging the rifle fire, he leapt high and landed on the opposite rooftop, turning into a shadow that slammed into the door with a boom. Bang. Under the violent force, the wooden door of the stairwell was shattered in an instant, and the rebel behind the door was directly knocked flying, crashing into the wall behind him like a lump of mud. By then, Jack's figure had already flashed down the stairs, and the 2 rebels holding a heavy machine gun and a submachine gun at the entrance below looked back in horror. Pooh! Pooh! The flash of the blade passed by, and the 2 rebels had not even reacted before they were killed by Jack. Their heads soared into the air, and bright red blood spurted out. Jack, who had consecutively killed 6 rebels, rushed out of the flat building and saw that it had already turned chaotic outside. The students, relying on their armor defense, charged and crashed amidst the rain of bullets. Especially Justin Wellen, who had a faint earth-colored light flow on his body, carrying a shield more than 1 meter tall and over 10 centimeters thick, completely ignoring the bullets and directly charging at a modified off-road vehicle trying to escape. Bang! 1 person and 1 car collided, causing a powerful shockwave on the surrounding ground. When the off-road vehicle with a speed of tens of kilometers per hour collided with Justin holding the shield, the ground under his feet shook with a roar, and fine cracks spread out. However, his body remained motionless. That off-road vehicle was directly stopped by the collision, its head deformed, and the sudden stop caused the gun-wielding rebels inside to be thrown off balance and cry out in panic. At this moment, the 2-meter-tall Howard Lee jumped down from the side building, and the iron column 3 meters long in his hand whistled and smashed heavily onto the off-road vehicle. Boom. Under the terrifying force, the off-road vehicle was blown up by Howard's pillar, flames erupted, and the rebels inside were instantly reduced to a bloody mess. The explosion of the vehicle caused the gasoline to splatter onto Howard and catch fire. "Damn, Howard, stop stealing my kills," complained Justin Wellen. Howard, with flames burning on his leg, ignored him. Exuding an overbearing aura, he carried the iron column and chased down the fleeing rebels in the distance. Boom. In the distance, a careless freshman was blasted into the air by a grenade. He rolled several times on the ground and couldn't get up. Before the rebel holding the grenade launcher could continue to fire, a heavy sword suddenly swung down from the side, cutting him and his weapon in half, and the bloody scene was terrifying. Mullen Weiss, who was standing beside, was very excited. Elsewhere, there were flickers of fire, continuous gunshots, and screams. Bullets flew everywhere, and hand grenades exploded chaotically. Blood and fire filled the air. It was hard to imagine that these freshmen were experiencing their first battle. Enhance your reading experience by removing. Chapter 62. Quick Spear Within 7 Steps. Jack Clark glanced around, not going after the rebels, but turning his gaze toward the depths of the small town. For him, killing these ordinary rebels wasn't of much use. But the cultists were different, each one was contribution points. Judging from the cultists being chased by Lori Parma and the others, Jack Clark noticed a few of them were not very fast, and their aura was only at the 2nd or 3rd layer heaven. With that thought, Jack Clark's figure vanished in an instant, and within a blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the 3-story building dozens of meters away. Bang! At Nobleman at. Jack Clark, who had jumped 5 meters high, landed on the edge of the window, and then leapt into the air again, grabbed the outer edge of the wall, and jumped up to the roof of the 3rd floor. At this time, chaos had erupted everywhere, so standing at a high point, he didn't have to worry about being sniped by hidden guns. Under the dark red sunset, standing on the highest building in the small town, Jack Clark looked out and saw the figures of Lori Parma and the others on the east side of the small town. Now, only 4 of the 10 evil god sect cultists were left. Lori Parma was suppressing 2 of them while the other 2 teachers were each hunting down one of them. As they went, waves of hand slashes of true strength, sword chi, and knife light were flying out more than 10 meters, and when they landed, they exploded like high explosives, causing houses to collapse. It was terrifying. Seeing this, Jack Clark's eyes flashed with regret, as he thought he could easily defeat some weaker cultists, but they didn't last even a few minutes. But there were only 5 corpses on the ground. Jack Clark's eyes suddenly paused. Following the battle traces of Lori Parma and the others through the small town, he saw only 5 corpses, 1 was missing. Over there. Jack Clark's figure leapt off the small building and landed on the roof of a Fiat house across the street. Following that, his figure swiftly darted toward the west side of the small town like a shadow, disappearing into the street in the blink of an eye, at an astonishing speed. As Jack Clark jumped down from the distant building, Lori Parma, who was fighting, turned and glanced back. Seeing that Jack Clark was chasing the fleeing cultist, there was a flash of admiration in her eyes. At the edge of the western part of the small town, the black-robed cultist rushed out, panting heavily, with a pale face and bloodstains on the corners of his mouth. After leaving the small town, the cultist's expression loosened, and excitement emerged as he looked at the forest ahead. As long as he entered the forest, he could escape back. He would tell the fanatics that this time the ambush was a trap. With this thought, Cruz's spirit was lifted. Then his face changed abruptly, and he suddenly threw himself to the left. At the very moment Cruz fell, a long knife flew like a cannonball, emitting a piercing shriek, and with a bang, it fiercely stabbed into a tree trunk more than 10 meters away. The half-a-meter-thick tree trunk was pierced directly by the long knife, breaking its branches with the force it carried. If Cruz reacted a bit slower, he would have been killed by the straight blade. More than 30 meters away, Jack Clark walked out of the small town with heavy footsteps, his eyes cold behind the face mask, emanating an intense oppressive force. Cruz struggled to get up from the ground, looking at Jack Clark, his expression gradually becoming crazed and vicious. "You, a high school junior at the 2nd layer heaven, dare to chase me. You're courting death. You know I'm a high school student." Jack Clark's eyes squinted involuntarily, sensing that today's attack might not be that simple. At that moment, a burst of madness sprouted from Cruz, and eerie red patterns like worms appeared on his exposed face and hands, radiating a strange red light. This red light carried a strong smell of blood, causing Jack Clark to instinctively feel disgusted. Second heaven peak. Huh. Feeling the aura bursting from the cultist, Jack Clark maintained a calm expression. Die. With a furious shout, Cruz was enveloped by a red light, looking like a vicious blood python as he pounced at Jack Clark. The blood spike in his hand tore through the air like a python's fang teeth. Roar. Accompanied by a faint elephant roar, Jack Clark erupted a fierce aura, and his figure expanded as if he was an enraged giant elephant charging forward. Both sides. Just as both parties were about to collide, a raging wind howled, and Jack Clark's figure shimmered slightly and passed by Cruz effortlessly. This made Cruz, who expected Jack Clark to engage, so upset that he almost spat out blood. He quickly stopped and turned around, only to see Jack Clark standing under a large tree more than 10 meters away. Spurtle Jack Clark pulled the straight blade out of the tree trunk and said indifferently, "You're too stupid to think I would duel you unarmed while you're holding a weapon. It would be foolish not to use a weapon against these sinister evil god sect cultists, and who knows if there's a deadly poison on the bloodthorn." Jack Clark's words made Cruz face look ugly, feeling insulted, and before he could speak, a sharp aura burst from Jack Clark's body. With a boom, he shattered the ground, disappearing at a speed that blurred the naked eye. Watching Jack Clark transform into a black shadow and shoot towards him, Cruz's face suddenly turned sinister as he threw the bloodthorn like a dart. Clang! Jack Clark, running at high speed, slashed the bloodthorn in half with his knife. By that time, Cruz had pulled out a huge handgun, similar to the Desert Eagle but with a double the caliber, a triumphant expression on his face. These students are still too naive. Didn't they know that a gun is faster within 7 steps? As Cruz aimed the gun at him, Jack Clark's hairs stood on end, his intuition telling him that the gun had immense power to penetrate full-body armor protection. Boom! The gunshot from Cruz's handgun rang out like a cannon. Jack Clark, who was only 3 meters away, suddenly dodged backward by bending and lowering his body, feeling a sharp breath whiz past him in an instant. Clang! Cruz, who missed the first shot, didn't have a chance for a second as Jack Clark instantly slid up to him and slashed the handgun with a backhand swing, severing it. Jack Clark, flipping up and turning around, swung his left arm wildly, exploding the air with a burst of strength, clashing his palm with Cruz, who had dropped the gun handle and lunged at him. Bang! At the moment of their collision, a terrifying circle of transparent shockwaves exploded. Pooh! Cruz, face changed instantly, spitting out a mouthful of blood, retreating several meters under the terrifying power of that punch, and his arm muscles tore open, bleeding profusely. "Aren't you second layer heaven?" Cruz stared at Jack Clark with a resentful face, as their high school junior was even more treacherous and concealed his strength to deceive him, pretending to be second layer heaven. That punch almost ruined his arm. This power was not second layer heaven. Jack Clark stood with his knife and said indifferently, "My realm is indeed second layer heaven, and I've just broken through. You're just too weak." That cultist's aura was clearly at the peak of second layer heaven, but it felt empty to Jack Clark when they clashed. That red power crumbled upon contact with true strength, and apart from making him feel slightly uncomfortable, it couldn't shake the overbearing dragon elephant true strength. His physique was even weaker, probably only at the first layer heaven limit. If not for the bizarre increase of red true power, Jack Clark could have killed him with a single punch just now. How is this possible? Cruz refused to believe that the power he had obtained at such a great cost was so weak. Unfortunately, Jack Clark had no interest in telling him more. His eyes turned cold, and a sharp aura burst out of him, creating an explosive roar of a raging wind. Not good. Seeing the rapidly magnifying sword light, Cruz instinctively wanted to dodge. Pooh! Jack Clark's figure appeared behind him, slowly retracting his knife. Only to see a bloodstain on Cruz's neck, followed by a scorching spray of blood, his lifeless body and head leadenly falling to the ground. Mind's Eye Bright Knife second layer ultimate move, Light King Slash. An explosion of double the speed in close range, slicing through everything with an extremely condensed blade edge. But it consumes more energy, and only after breaking through to the third layer heaven can it be used consecutively. Jack Clark chose this sword skill for this very reason. His physique would become stronger as his avatar evolved, making this move terrifying in the later stages. Jack Clark let out a slow breath, and the tension in his heart loosened a little after confirming the cultist's death. Although the fight from then until now was only a few moves, it was highly dangerous. Especially since he didn't expect the cultist to have a hidden cannon in his bosom, but luckily he was cautious, always on guard when he sensed a slight danger from him. Otherwise, he might not have been able to dodge if he was shot at close range. These guys are just as cunning and treacherous as the teachers said, without any sense of martial arts virtue. Enhance your reading experience by removing. Chapter 63. Information Wall. By the time Jack Clark came back carrying the corpse of the cultist, the battle had already ended. Most of the 100 or so rebels had been killed, and more than a dozen had surrendered. The soldiers who had guided Jack and his classmates were cleaning up the battlefield and collecting weapons and ammunition. The freshmen who had participated in the battle were excitedly chatting, talking about how brave and fierce they were in the battle just now. Some students even took out their mobile phones and posed with the rocket launcher for selfies. Even Justin Wellen stood in front of the burnt and deformed off-road vehicle, making a one-handed pose with his thick shield, and asked his classmates to help take pictures. Of course, there were some injuries in this battle, like the student who was hit by a grenade and was lying on a stretcher screaming, but his voice was full of energy. With 6 to 7 times the physical strength of ordinary people and the defense of full body armor, he was only mildly injured by the explosion of small-sized grenades. Some other students also sustained light injuries, such as chest armor being pierced by bullets and the special steel wire stopping the bullets halfway into the muscles. In addition, some of the freshmen had already taken off their helmets, their faces pale as they leaned against the wall and gasped for breath. They were fine when they were tense before, but once the battle was over, these youths who had seen blood for the first time were immediately frightened by the cruelty of the war. Looking at those limbs severed and corpses mangled, some students couldn't bear the sight and even vomited. However, it wasn't just them. Those seemingly excited freshmen were actually also tense, but they were just venting their emotions in another way, including Justin Wellen. After all, they were just youths, and this was their first time on the battlefield, witnessing such bloody scenes. Even Jack Clark, who after the battle ended and had withdrawn from the cold and calm state when hunting with the heavy armored beast, felt a little uncomfortable looking at those mutilated bodies. Seeing Jack carrying the cultist's corpse with a knife in one hand and the corpse in the other students also reacted. Mullen Weiss looked upset. Damn, how could I forget about that? Marcus Lee also felt regret. Yeah, I was so excited just now, I forgot that killing these cultists would earn contribution points. Miscalculated. Zach Lyons shook his head. Justin Wellen approached curiously and asked, "How is it, Jack? What is the strength of this cultist?" Jack nodded. As the teachers said, their strength is weaker than their realm. For example, this one's realm is equivalent to the second layer heaven peak, but his basic physique is only at the first layer heaven limit, and his blood-colored true strength is weak and not well concentrated. So weak, Justin Wellen was surprised. As Jack was talking, Howard Lee, who was carrying a pillar, also walked over with heavy steps and said solemnly, "Because these cultists are the result of external rapid success, it is normal for them to be weaker." External force. Jack looked at him. At Nobleman at. Howard Lee nodded. It's similar to the empowerment in Buddhist scriptures, where stronger fanatics perform secret skills to enhance them. The process is painful and has a low success rate. These low-level cultists mostly come from this kind of process. The classification of the evil god sect cultist is quite simple. Those below the third layer heaven are ordinary cultists, and those from the fourth layer heaven to the sixth layer heaven are called fanatics. As for the strong men above the seventh layer heaven, they are bishops, responsible for managing and controlling the followers below them. As Jack and the others were discussing, Lori Parma and the other 2 teachers along with the soldier platoon leader came back, all of them looking somewhat disheveled. It couldn't be helped. Those senior fanatics were too crazy. They almost got injured in the explosion of 2 initial stage of the 5th layer heaven fanatics. Fortunately, they were prepared. As for the other 3 4th layer heaven fanatics, they didn't give them a chance to self-destruct, killing them lightning fast. Adding to a few 2nd or 3rd layer heaven ordinary cultists, they were almost wiped out. Lori Parma said solemnly, "Though the strength of this attack is not weak, it is not as strong as we expected. It should be just a probe, and those guys did not fully take the bait." The female teacher nodded slightly. "It's normal, after all we leaked the information that there was only one teacher leading the team, and the reinforcements were all 2nd layer heaven freshmen. But those people won't be so easily fooled. This time they obviously just sent a small squad to test us. They must have been prepared for 2 possible outcomes. If the information turned out to be accurate, half of them would engage the leading teacher while the others joined the rebels to kill the freshmen. If the information turned out to be false, their losses would not be too serious." While they were talking, Jack walked over with the cultist's corpse and paused when he heard the conversation of the teachers from a distance. It turned out that their ambush was a trap laid by Lori Parma and the others. Jack threw the cultist's body to the side and politely said, "Teacher, there is also a second layer heaven cultist here who was killed by me." Lori Parma praised, "Well done, I will add it to the system when we get back to base." A smile appeared on Jack's face, having earned a small profit upon arrival. The other two teachers and the squad leader also glanced at Jack in the chaos of that first encounter with battle. This freshman actually had the heart to chase and kill the cultists without getting injured. "I remember you're Jack Clark from Class 3, right?" the female teacher started. Jack nodded. "Yes, teacher." The female teacher chuckled. "I'm Sylvia Lyons, the teacher of Class 9, and I'll be in charge of Group 2's freshman teaching next semester. Are you interested in joining us?" Jack was dumbfounded. Lori Parma said irritably, "Sylvia, I'm still here. If you want to poach someone, you should at least find a time when I'm not here." Sylvia Lyons didn't care. "I just think this freshman has a good temperament and talent, and I'm afraid you guys who only know about cultivation all day long will mislead him." "That's pure slander. I cultivate and focus on cultivation, but 1 am also doing my responsibilities," Lori Parma argued. Sylvia Lyons smiled. "Really? But I heard that someone only showed up once when the freshmen were establishing their foundation, and then they completely neglected their duties. The meditation method and body casting skill of foundation establishment have templates. Whether you can practice them depends entirely on your talent. One don't need to be there all the time, do I?" "Ahem." The squad leader coughed. "Two teachers, it's getting late. Why don't you take the students and continue on, and I'll take care of things here." "All right." Since the squad leader stepped in to mediate, Lori Parma took the opportunity to give in, because he indeed felt a bit guilty. This year, when the new batch of students entered the school, he had just had a breakthrough, and so, he left the foundation establishment in the hands of the class leader and martial art committee member, and went into retreat. But just like he said, the matter of foundation establishment in the systematic template of the school completely depended on talent, and there was no impact whether he was there or not. It's just not nice to say that. Leaving 8 soldiers to guard the captives, the 2 soldiers led everyone through the small town. They then followed the broken road for several kilometers before they saw a convoy of more than a dozen military vehicles and armored cars parked on the edge of the forest from afar. Lori Parma and the other 3 teachers went to talk with the major in the convoy, and Jack and the others boarded 2 military vehicles separately. Soon, the convoy started and headed towards Leicester City. "Jack, what do you think of this caption?" In the car, Justin Wellen, who had taken off his helmet, handed his mobile phone over to Jack and asked for his opinion. "What is this?" Jack took the phone and saw that Justin was posting on the social media. It's just that the content was not about flaunting food, but pictures taken earlier. The first picture was him holding a shield in front of a wrecked off-road vehicle, then a single soldier rocket launcher, and the third picture was a pile of rebel corpses in the ruined small town. The caption below read, "The winter break is coming, and as a mercenary of Koroya's expedition, one just had an intense battle right upon arrival, slaying hundreds of enemies. It's so enjoyable." Justin Wellen was excited. "How about it, Jack? Doesn't my caption have that chaotic end of days vibe?" Jack returned the phone to him and said, "I can't see any chaotic end of days vibe, but there's a strong sense of self-satisfaction and show off." Justin Wellen disagreed. "Jack, you're not fun at all. It's not showing off, it's simply a happy share." As he spoke, he happily clicked on the post. After a while, there were a string of replies below. Not only Justin Wellen, but also other students were posting on social media. In the posts, they bragged about how many enemies they killed today and how brave they were at that time, and so on. However, whether it was Justin Wellen or those students, they all blocked friends who were non-cultivators when posting on social media. This was the school's requirement. There was a clause in the contract signed during the foundation establishment that they should not mention too much about cultivation in front of ordinary people. It also includes various resources and cultivation methods information. When signing up for this trial, the contract Jack signed also had confidentiality requirements, and they were not allowed to reveal too much about Koroya to ordinary people. It seems that the Federation has always been deliberately blurring the information about cultivators being superior to ordinary people. This kind of information blurring is actually quite terrifying. 90% of the ordinary people in this world live in their own information cocoons, where cognition, insight, and thinking are all trapped by layers of barriers. Most of the information they receive comes from the internet and television, such as self-media, hot searches, traffic news, and various high-heat topics. Many people seemingly receive a lot of information every day and can see things happening all over the world, but in the end, they seem to have gained nothing but emotional output. However, with the continuous outbreak of events in Koroya and the appearance of chaos in other small allied countries, there are signs that the boundaries between transcendence and ordinary people are gradually being broken. Chapter 64. Is this your special? As the convoy approached Leicester, some buildings came into view. However, compared to the thriving Mist River City, this city gave Jack Clark a sense of backwardness reminiscent of the 80s. The roads were dusty and the buildings were dilapidated. Only the city center had some skyscrapers, the rest were 1 or 2-story houses. The slightly better buildings were only 3 or 4-story red brick edifices. By the time they entered the city, it was already dark. Jack noticed that there were hardly any people on the street. Occasionally, a few figures would hurriedly disappear into the dim alleys. Apart from that, there were few street lamps on the gray roads, with a light bulb emitting a yellowish glow only at considerable intervals. Jack was a bit puzzled. Isn't it already 2055? Why is Koroya so rundown? Although the progress of civilian technology has slowed down in this world due to the rise of martial arts, the fields of biological medicine and weapons research are even more advanced. In addition, network technology has been gradually booming in recent years. For example, QR codes and microchat, a WeChat-like software, have gradually occupied the market. At the same time, online and e-commerce businesses are also on the rise, showing signs of an imminent era of prosperity. It's completely like a different world compared to the backwardness here. Regarding Jack's confusion, Justin Wellen shrugged, that's normal. Many factors influence the development of economy and civilization, such as the local environment. And it so happens that the rulers of Koroya do not wish for development here. Jack squinted his eyes, to maintain their rule. Justin nodded. Correct. When the Federation was established back then, these backward countries of the Third World like Koroya were feudal. In order to consolidate their rules, the Koroya high-level officials have blocked the dissemination of true martial arts over the years, and the development of network and technology is also very backward. Especially for some high-tech products, they are basically only accessible to the wealthy. Of course, another reason is that there are few cracks here, leading to a poor cultivation environment, hence they have managed to remain unchanged for decades, and the Federation is too lazy to pay attention. After all, the first law that enabled the formation of the Federation was the Human Camp Alliance, but they could not interfere in the internal affairs of other countries unless it impacted the Federation. While the two were chatting, the convoy entered the military base in the city center under the gaze of several hidden observers. The area was a bit bustling here, with one high-rise after another ranging from 10 to 20 floors. The streets were wide and clean, adorned with advertisements and pictures of local celebrities everywhere. The lead armored car parted ways with Jack and their group at an intersection. The 2 troop carriers and the sedan the teachers were in continued forward, eventually stopping outside a hotel. At the hotel steps, some people in military uniforms were already standing there. Seeing Lori Parma's trio dismount from the vehicle, a middle-aged man with the rank of Major General laughed and came down. You've all had a tough journey. The trio of Lori Parma quickly responded politely. Greetings Major General Hong, it's not tough, it's our responsibility. It's a pity that this time we didn't catch any big fish, just a team of ordinary fanatics probing. No worries, wiping out a small team is equivalent to weakening them. We just need to push forward according to plan next, no need to rush. At this time, Jack and others also got out of the vehicle. The spectacle of the freshmen, all clad in black-red armor and carrying various large cold weapons, was quite spectacular. Let's go. Let's first take care of dinner, we can discuss other matters tomorrow. You guys flew in an airplane for so long and experienced a battle, you must all be hungry. All right. Led by the 3 teachers, Jack and the other students entered the hotel. However, with the military receiving party taking care of everything, Jack and other students were only in charge of eating and drinking. After they were full, the staff led everyone upstairs. With more students from other schools expected to arrive, the military arranged 2 people per room. Under such circumstances, naturally, Jack chose to room with Justin. At Nobleman at 18th floor, hotel room 1808. Finally, we can rest. Justin set his shield against the wall, making a dull thud when it landed, then tossed his knapsack onto the bed. Jack, do you want to bathe first, or shall I? Either is fine. All right, I'll go first, then it's your turn. While Justin went to take a bath, Jack also took off his battle armor. This place was a safe zone under the control of the military, so there was no need to carry it with him all the time. It was already 8 o'clock in the evening, and Jack Clark was standing by the window, looking out. He noticed that the surrounding area was pitch black, with only sporadic lights in the area controlled by the military. I didn't expect there to be such underdeveloped areas in this world, Jack murmured, his eyes narrowing in contemplation. From the current situation, Koroya might be more complicated than he had imagined. The Federal Army, high-order cultivators, evil god sect cultists, and rebels. But what roles did they, the trial students, play in all of this? No matter what role he played, he decided to prioritize stability, trying to earn more contribution points to improve his strength, and make progress in breaking through the third layer heaven as soon as possible. While Jack was deep in thought, Justin Wellen, drying his hair, walked out and said, "Jack, it's your turn." Okay. After a quick bath, Jack changed his clothes and came out to see Justin lying on the bed, smiling as he chatted on his phone. "Take a look at the group chat, Jack. There's something good." "What good stuff?" Jack went over, picked up the phone, and opened the chat app to find that there were already 99 plus unread messages in the 3 to 9 chat group. In confusion, he opened the group to see Crystal Leinster and the others chatting merrily. After they got off the plane, they too were attacked, just like Jack and his group. During the fight, Crystal had bravely killed more than a dozen rebels, showing none of the meekness one might expect from a girl. But what surprised everyone most was that Freya Louise had sniped a third layer heaven believer. Yes, sniped. The girls in the chat group had posted many photos, including Crystal standing on an armored car with a long sword, looking heroic, and Mandy Leinster standing with her sword sheathed. What was rather unusual was Freya's photo. In the photo, the girl was wearing a dark red armor and carrying a sniper gun that was over 2 meters long and 30 millimeters thick, looking very sci-fi and incredibly cool. Jack Clark. At Freya, "What's going on? Why are we given cold weapons while you have a sniper cannon?" Freya. Playful, "Didn't I tell you before? My cultivation method is special." Jack Clark. Speechless. "And this is what you call special? Could it be that your true martial arts is called gunfight skill?" Mandy Leinster popped in, curious. "What is gunfight skill?" "Just something I made up." Jack coughed. Freya explained. "I'm following a special cultivation path. My cultivation method can mask my own murderous intent and aura, and lock onto the aura of enemies from a distance. With such a cultivation method, I don't have much face-to-face combat power, but one can deliver much more damage at my level by using special firearms. For example, I could silently kill enemies 2 kilometers away with this 28mm caliber anti-material sniper gun, using special armor-piercing bullets. Even a 4th layer heaven cultivator might be killed if they're caught off guard. Aside from that, this gun of mine can also be used as a cannon. If shot continuously with burning explosive bullets, it can actually demolish a building in a short amount of time." After Freya finished her explanation, the entire chat group went silent. Jack. Stunned. "Won't this be cheating?" Freya. Sticking out tongue, "This gun of mine was originally prepared by my aunt for my 2nd grade trials. It is meant for hunting large mutated beasts. And there's a cost to taking this route too. Initial power is weak, and it's only after breaking through the 4th layer heaven that you have real combat power. In fact, this kind of cultivation method is already mature within the military. Some strong people use specially developed cutting-edge weapons and can even kill terrifying giant beasts that a hydrogen bomb can't." Crystal Leinster. "I've heard you mention this in the afternoon, but I'm still unsatisfied." Matt Watkins. "Yeah, while we're struggling on the front line, you killed a third layer heaven cultist in the back with ease. That's 10 contribution points for you." After this, the chat group was bombarded with comments against Freya. Can't help it. Her weapon was just too overpowered. Chapter 65. The Desire for Destruction. After condemning Freya Louise's weapon, everyone exchanged their experiences in being attacked and fighting today. Although the temporary team was disbanded just as it started, sharing information on both sides still had some usefulness. For example, the cultists who attacked Crystal Leinster's group were different from those they encountered, as their skin would turn black and their muscles would bulge in combat, having strong strength and defense. It seemed that the sect followers were not from the same faction or church as the evil god sect cultists here. By the time they had finished chatting, it was already 10 p.m. While Justin Wellen was still playing on his mobile phone, Jack Clark put down his phone, staring at the ceiling in deep thought. After seeing Freya Louise's sniper cannon, he wondered whether he should prioritize increasing his defense when he had more attribute points later on. Jack Clark hadn't thought about this before he encountered the cultists, but today's sudden battle made him feel a strong sense of crisis. For advanced cultivators with true power protection, the threat of ordinary firearms could be ignored, but that's not the case for low-level cultivators like them. For example, this afternoon, without the battle armor prepared by the school in advance, no one would dare to charge against the sweep of rifles, submachine guns, and even heavy machine guns. Although they had already broken through to the second layer heaven, even the weakest of them had a physique 7 times stronger than an ordinary person. They were still made of flesh and blood, unable to withstand bullets capable of penetrating a few millimeters of iron. However, battle armor could only defend against ordinary bullets, not against special weapons, such as the enhanced Desert Eagle of that cultist and Freya Louise's sniper cannon. Especially for snipers like Freya Louise hiding in the dark, the threat to freshmen like Jack Clark from the second layer heaven was even more significant. After all, when facing a cultist attack, one could choose to resist head-on, fight or retreat, but if targeted from a hidden position, death or heavy injury would follow. Let's see the effects of strengthening a few points at that time. Jack Clark made up his mind, closed his eyes, and was immersed in observing the heavy armored beast. Thousands of kilometers away, by the broad estuary of a river, a hideous black unique beast emerged from its lair and disappeared into the water, stirring up mud and sand. As the heavy armored beast grew in size, its defense and strength also skyrocketed under the influence of its talent, making this once somewhat dangerous estuary its hunting ground. Bang! Underwater, the splash exploded as the heavy armored beast slapped out a claw, smashing half of the head of a regular mutated fish more than 3 meters long. Crack! The heavy armored beast bit out a blood hole the size of a washbasin and chewed with its upper and lower jaws. The thick blood mixed with fish meat residues spilled from its teeth, looking fierce and terrifying. The 3-meter-long mutated fish weighed about 200 kilograms, which the heavy armored beast devoured in less than 10 minutes. Jack Clark could keenly feel that as the energy was transformed, the heavy armored beast's cells throughout its body were constantly dividing and compressing, and its body expanded visibly, defying biological growth rules. The outer armor became thicker and harder. Still not enough. Feeling the sense of emptiness within, Jack Clark, the heavy armored beast's tail slightly swayed, continuing to patrol the deep water in search of its next prey. Freshwater and seawater mixed here in the wide, deep river that bred numerous ferocious freshwater fish and some mutated sea fish that could adapt to freshwater occasionally appeared. As the heavy armored beast swam a few kilometers away, a shadow more than 5 meters long loomed nearby, its massive body exuding a sense of oppression. This mutated fish had thick scales all over its body, resembling a grouper but more massive. The fang teeth in its slightly open mouth were intimidating. As soon as this fish appeared, the small fishes around it scattered. However, the heavy armored beast's eyes brightened. Looking at the heavy armored beast lunging like a crocodile, the mutated grouper remained calm. When the heavy armored beast was about 2 meters away from it, its mouth suddenly swelled several times larger. Boom! A terrifying suction force came from the mutated grouper's mouth, and in an instant, the water within a few meters range in front of it collapsed into a vortex, swallowing the heavy armored beast along. This was the grouper's hunting skill, suddenly opening its mouth wide when approaching its prey, using the water discharged from its gills to create potent devouring power to swallow its prey. Now that it had mutated, its devouring power had become even more formidable, almost transforming into a natural talent that allowed it to swallow everything within several meters. Once prey was swallowed, the inner teeth inside it would tear and eat the prey, like boom. The mutated grouper, which had swallowed more than half of the heavy armored beast's body, struggled wildly, stirring the surrounding water chaotically. At the same time, scarlet blood gushed out from its gill area, turning the surrounding water red in the blink of an eye and emitting a strong smell of blood. Thud. The mutated grouper's head was torn in half, and the blood-soaked heavy armored beast slowly crawled out, just like when it had killed the large catfish before. Thanks to its terrifying defense, the heavy armored beast's favorite thing was when these mutated fish swallowed it, allowing it to kill them without much effort. Clutching the massive mutated grouper corpse, the heavy armored beast began to eat. Today was another blissful day, a chance to eat its fill. Meanwhile, many small fish were attracted by the scent of blood and swarmed towards the heavy armored beast. Whenever the heavy armored beast chewed and bit, they scrambled for the scraps of flesh and blood that overflowed from its mouth, and they were swallowed by the heavy armored beast while feasting. The next morning, more than 20 freshmen in black-red armor gathered outside the hotel, each carrying their heavy weapons. Lori Parma and the other 3 teachers stood at the front, with 7 second lieutenants in military uniforms behind them. Looking at the refreshed students who had rested for a night, Lori Parma said solemnly, "From today on, you will be divided into 7 groups, with 4 people in each group. Your mission is to cooperate with the patrol teams and search according to the requirements of the area, finding the cultists hidden in the crowd. Remember, every single one of these cultists has blood on their hands and is beyond redemption. Kill them mercilessly once you find them. As for the rebels, they can be captured alive after neutralizing the threat, provided they surrender and stop resisting. This is a special bone from the Blood God sect, whose aura can help you quickly identify hidden Blood God cultists in the crowd." There was a table in front of everyone, on which was a red bone a meter long, half a meter wide, and seemingly part of a spine from some giant creature. As this blood bone, curious, Justin Wellen walked over, only to be assailed by a thick, blood-curdling evil scent, which forced him to retreat quickly. Lori Parma continued, "In addition, each team will have an advanced cultivator secretly following you, including me and the 3 teachers. You don't have to worry about encountering advanced cultivators. But our target is the fanatics who may appear. We won't care about ordinary cultists. You and the soldiers in your team will deal with them. If you encounter a 4th layer heaven fanatic attacking, everyone can choose to retreat immediately. Don't make futile resistance. The gap between the 2nd layer heaven and them is too great. Also, I have put some high-level resources with unlocked permissions in the trial group. There are introductions for each resource, and you can consider exchanging them later. Besides, if you have any questions about cultivation during your rest time, you can ask me or Teacher Lyons in the group chat." Lori Parma then reminded everyone of several other details, after which a staff member distributed a portable micro camera and wireless earpiece to each person. Afterward, the teams were formed. Jack Clark and Justin Wellen, along with 2 other male students, formed a temporary team. One of them was Zach Lyons, who had ranked 50th in the martial arts arena, and the other was called White Veil. The 4 followed 2nd Lieutenant Carl Raven and left at Nobleman at. It was finally time for a massacre. Jack's eyes slightly reddened. He didn't know if it was because half of his soul was human and the other half was a mutated beast, but as he continued to hunt and devour, his desire for destruction and rampage grew stronger within him. This was also the reason he had chosen to participate in the trial. Too much restraint could accumulate stress and stir up unbearable emotions. If not vented, something might go wrong one day, like